Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address at a special time, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief Nick Villano, streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. The 2021-2022 New Jersey Devils season preview is here. We've got an action-packed 3 hours, 3 whole hours of New Jersey Devils talk. I don't know how you talked me into this, Nick. I'm tired. I'm overworked. We've got not one, not two, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 guests tonight because we want to talk Devils hockey. The Devils seem to be on the rise. They seem to be the talk of the town. We are going to start our season Friday night against the Chicago Blackhawks at The Rock. And we'll be at Taj Lounge 973 across the street from Prudential Center on Edison Place for Game Day Live and Post-Game Live. And we haven't really done anything like this in almost 2 years, Nick.
It's exciting. I'm excited, Sam. This is what we've been waiting for. It's been too long since we've had a season where we can go in, a little normalcy, a little excitement, a little, jazzed up. We're looking at a season where the Devils have expectations. They made some moves. They should be a fun team, something they haven't been in 2 years, really 3 years. Since that Taylor Hall MVP season, this team has just been kind of a drag. Obviously, the Taylor Hall injury really hurt that the year after his MVP season, and then just a lack of chemistry the season after that. And then last year, it was just a bunch of young kids, and they were just overwhelmed a lot. So this year, you got the young kids, you got the excitement, you got the superstars at every level. And then you have a couple of savvy veterans that you want to root for. Tomas Tatar, you got a much bigger rooting interest in him because of what happened to him in Montreal. And you got a lot of players that, Jimmy Vesey coming on the team and trying to reestablish his career. And, it was just interesting hearing Tom Fitzgerald and Lindy Ruff talk about Jimmy Vesey and just how they had hard conversations with him and saying, you have to change your game. You have to be a penalty killer. You have to be a guy who blocks shots. You got to change the way that you play the game if you want to stay in the NHL. And you got a contract out of it. So there's just a lot of storylines this season, Sam. Like, we aren't even talking about the obvious. The Jack Hughes, the Dougie Hamilton, the Mackenzie Blackwood, the Nico Hischier, Igor Sharangovich. There's so much to talk about with this team that we had to get 6 guests. We got a guest. Our first guest is going to talk about the Utica Comets, the Devils' new AHL affiliate, and kind of see what that's going to be like to bring that to the stage. We got old friends that you might remember from podcasts past. We got new friends who are going to talk about some of the things. We got people talking about sports betting. We got people talking about the prospects here and overseas. Sam, I think we got it covered. 3 hours. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I've been thinking about it all day. It's like, how do you talk 3 hours of Devils hockey? And then I reminded myself that we talked 9.5 months without Devils hockey. I think, what's 3 hours, right?
What is 3 hours? Honestly, I still look back at that and I'm like, what did we talk about? Like, people ask. Somebody asked me the other day, do you still do the podcast in the off season? I'm like, let me tell you about something. There was a 10-month off season and we talked every single week. We didn't take no weeks off. I think that should be our mantra. Although,
and of course we had specials too. We had specials, like when we had to make accommodations for the future Hall of Famer Stan Fischler
Stan.
coming, beaming him in from Israel. Yeah,
we had a Bryce on a Monday.
Yeah.
We
had like triple headers at times, and we had like triple headers, and it's like we had no Devils hockey. Also, I did a podcast
some days.
I also did a podcast on how to cut your hair during a pandemic.
Yeah, you tried something there. You
we were trying different things. Clearly, we talked about Action Park.
I did not have that same podcast because this thing has been growing ever since. But yeah, it's going to be weird one day when I finally do cut it because I'm going to go short like you. I'm just going to go all out and just like bzz, the whole thing. I do plan on donating it, so it'll go to a good cause. But when you got lettuce like this, you gotta do something good with it.
Yeah, believe it or not, there was a period of my life I actually had long hair in high school. I try to grow it out because when you put on the helmet, a hockey helmet or a lacrosse helmet, you wanted that hair to flow, and then I just gave up on it. But it got pretty long, though.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is that I've never really wanted to get past that phase, that awkward phase. But in the pandemic, I got to wear a hat to work every day. So I was like, well, this isn't too bad. It's, it's only my wife seeing my awkward phase. So I could handle that. And then we got past it. And then you get to like another like long awkward phase where you're like, it's kind of long, but you can't put it in a ponytail. So it's always in your face. So we had to get through that. Again, hat really helped with that too. Once we got, and then we experimented with some headbands. I was trying to pull off the Carmelo. It didn't work. Now we're here. We got ponytail holders. We got man buns. I'm not a big man bun guy though. I'm bigger on the ponytail. But anyway, Sam, how did we get here? We just started the podcast. We're already off the rails. Get the train back on the track, Sam.
Yeah, and Lisa and Mike Rossi are talking about haircuts, and the guy Nathan Dowie on YouTube Live is like, how much do we have to pay Sam Wu to get a haircut while podcasting?
Why
That's
are they
not
paying
a bad
you?
idea.
Do they think? Are we paying you? You already got the short hair.
Yeah, we should pay you, Nick. I don't know what they're talking about.
It's fine. Anyway. We got 5 minutes until we got a brand new guest. We're starting off brand new. David Edelstein he's a TV guy. Sam, we got a TV guy coming on the podcast.
I was reading his bio, and I'm wondering if he's ever bumped into Erica Wachter.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Possible.
We're going to have to ask him that.
She
may be a little bit older. Did I talk to Fitzgerald?
Yeah. No, I said he talked to Fitzgerald.
So he did.
Some people.
Oh,
yeah, he's getting them good interviews.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, he works for the local station there. It's always weird because you gotta give him the call letters, right? The WUTR and WFXV. Basically, he works in Central New York. He's the sports director of the Central New York station, and they do. Sam, they do Utica big. Like right on the front page, the Utica comment and them Devils black and red, they do Utica big. And it's funny, you think like we're in the New York metro area. So our TV viewing habits, our sports viewing habits are just much different. But think about like if the Trenton Thunder or the Lakewood Blue Claws were front and center on ABC 7 or Fox 5. Like it's unheard of. But these smaller stations, they go big for minor league hockey. And honestly, Sam, when I saw that, it's weird, right? But when I saw that, something like made it feel a little bit better about leaving. I hated leaving Binghamton. We've met a lot of Binghamton people. We've talked to a lot of Binghamton people on social media. Became friendly with a lot of them. But maybe this will work out. If this is the kind of coverage we're going to get, that's something. And if the fan base is really that far in that the news station is going all in like that, maybe we got something here.
Yeah, and it's almost going back home. I mean, the Devils did have a farm team in Utica. I was hoping that they would call them the Utica Devils and bring back that old jersey. But, I don't mind that old Utica Devils jersey to be, a classic. Martin Brodeur wore it, Claude Vilgrain. Some of those names may ring a bell. But it's nice to be back. And you know what? Utica is getting it's an exciting time in Devils history because the pipeline is full of young prospects. And being a Utica Comets fan, I know there's going to be a transition. There's definitely going to be a transition there. But if you're going to get a brand new team, let it be the New Jersey Devils and the entire organization. So you get to watch Alexander Holtz, Boquist. You know what?
Down there?
Nolan
Kevin Ball. You get to see Kevin Ball with like Andre the Giant out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like they're getting a crappy AHL team. They're getting a team that has, some of the players have potential of being possibly an all-star and possibly, you never know, if one of them is a Hall of Famer in the rough.
Yeah.
You never know. Never know.
But yeah, and real quick before you leave, what did you think about ESPN last night? Did you get a chance to see the first broadcast?
Not really, Nick, because I've been preparing for the whole Taj Lounge.
Yeah, but they're trying a couple things, trying a couple new camera angles, which I like. The besides the fact that Ray Ferraro felt the need to bring up the fact that the Devils used to do the trap, I don't know why that's still a thing, but he felt the need to say, "Oh, those Devils teams, they would just swallow you up with that thing." It's like he almost wouldn't say the trap, but had to bring it up. It's fine.
It's as if in their head, Sam. As if Parm, was stuck in 2004.
Yeah. No, it's funny. That's kind of funny that they brought something up from 1990s. They're mid 90s. We stopped doing the trap in like 97, Sam, but they keep bringing it up, and that's fine. It's fine. Anyway, time for our first guest. I will keep social media buzzing. What are you guys up to? Shakir got another goal today or yesterday. Matt Jr. Yeah, Shakir Mukhamadullin is somebody we were going to be talking about in the 9 o'clock hour because that is somebody I'm very curious about. I'm curious, is he better? Is he really better? And it's funny. The Igor from the Columbus Blue Jackets was always considered a very large reach by the Blue Jackets, and he made the NHL team this year after 1 year. Which is what you expect from first-round picks, when they're not defensemen. Like the forward first-round picks are usually people who can do that. So maybe they made the right decision. And now you look at the Devils, and people were flabbergasted that they took Shakir Mukhamadullin with that 20th overall pick, and people thought it was a terrible pick. And now, again, he looks really good in Russia. I don't know what that means. I don't know if, how much size he put on. It's hard to tell in the skates in the pads and all that. But he looks better. It's early. I don't want to get my hopes up, but he looks better. That's absolutely something that I'm very excited about. There's lots of hair talk in here. But I got a very interesting piece coming out tomorrow. Just for the people who want to get their hopes way up. I now do this every year. There's a couple pieces that I do every single year. The awards piece is coming out this weekend. Hopefully. I'm going to try to fit that one in. But the 5 things the Devils need to go right for them to win the Stanley Cup, that's coming out tomorrow. So that's something, it's half in jest. but it's not all in jest. It's all, having a little fun, doing some things that, I don't want to take everything too seriously this week. We got a lot of bold prediction pieces. And I'm excited because on Friday's the day that we're doing the Pucks and Pitchforks team piece. So we got Dan Rice on there, we got Rob LaDuca, we got Steve Palumbo, we got, Vinnie Parise is going to be on that piece. I'm going to be on that piece. We're all going to give a couple predictions about the Devils and the league as a whole. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to, something that I think that is going to come out really well. So that's coming out Friday. So that'll be something you can read to get yourself excited for the home opener. Chicago Blackhawks come to town at 7 p.m. Or I think it's 7:30. Is it 7:30? It's I got to double check the schedule. I need to get on top of it. But Friday night is the night, the Devils, Blackhawks. Those two teams, it's really interesting that those are the two teams that are going to start the season facing off against each other because they're both in this kind of weird situation. They both got new number one defensemen. The Devils got Dougie Hamilton. The Blackhawks got Seth Jones. They both have, they're both relying a little bit on the netminder. Marc-Andre Fleury is looking to turn that team around, while Mackenzie Blackwood is looking to really step it up after kind of a rough season last year. And they both got star power. Obviously the Blackhawks have a little bit of older star power, but then the Devils have a little bit younger star power. It's a really interesting matchup for that first game of the year. Sam, you are back.
I'm back. Our first of 6 guests. His name is David Edelstein. He's the sports director of WURT ABC. You can find him on Twitter at David Z. Edelstein. David, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight? David, are you there?
Hey, guys, I hear you. It just got a little choppy for a second. How are you?
I'm good. You got me now, David? I think you hung up on him, Sam.
The technical difficulties.
Right off
This
the
is what
bat.
happens when you do it live. All right, I'm going to try that alternate number. I'll get that alternate number.
Okay.
It's not my fault. All right.
I don't know about all that. I love to blame the Woo. It's always the Woo's fault. Anyway, I'm really excited about the season because I did not like last year because we were watching just an inferior product just in general. For most of the season, the team was just unwatchable. Not most. There was a part right after the COVID outbreak. It was terrible hockey. They were just getting railroaded on a nightly basis. After that first game, I think they beat Boston the first game back. And then we got all excited again. We're like, all right, back where we came from. And then the COVID just really did a number on the rest of the team. The Nico injuries, and he was just ineffective for most of the year. Even when he was on the ice, he just seemed off. He got injured twice, and he got COVID. So it was just a nightmare season for him. He's somebody that I'm really going to focus on. I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't terribly impressed with Nico Hischier's preseason, but it's preseason. I'm not going to take too much away from it. It's just Jack Hughes looks a lot better than him in the one game that they played. So I'm curious to see what comes of that. Is he going to transition more to a two-way player just in general, or is he going to try something different? What's really going to be the Nico Hischier season of this season? Are we going to get something great? Or are we going to get something satisfactory? Hopefully, it's his first full season as captain. He's going to have to answer a lot of questions that, he didn't have to answer in previous seasons, and especially because media is back, and, we're doing the in-locker room interviews and all that, and Sam is back. Speaking of back.
I'm back. I hope this works the second time around.
Okay.
I feel bad.
We're
making first impressions, everything. And this is the first time David's been on the program. He's from WURT ABC. He is the sports director. You can find him on Twitter at David Z. Edelstein. David, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I am back, and you know what else is back, guys? Hockey is back, finally, right?
Hockey's back! Yes, I am excited. I know Utica seems really excited. David, I was going through your station's website today, and it's very big on the Utica Comets.
Well, yeah, it's good that you noticed that. Actually, just today we made the announcement that we are continuing at our station as the home of the Utica Comets. So fans will get to watch all of the Comets home games right on our own channel. So we are your home of the Utica Comets. We're in Utica, and this is our big thing. And so we're counting down days, literally every single day. We've got a graphic counting down home opener this Sunday.
And that's the thing, is that I'm going to be honest with you, David. I was a little critical of the Devils moving their AHL team again. It just seemed like we were trying to build something in Binghamton, and then all of a sudden they're moving to Utica. But I see the coverage. I see the difference in philosophy and the difference in fan base. And I was a little worried that we're coming into a Canucks fan base. These people are used to Canucks hockey, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the right move. So let me ask you this. You know this fan base a lot better than we do. You know exactly the ins and outs of the people there in central New York. What do you think will be the fan thought process? What do you think the crowds are going to be like once we start on Sunday?
Well, first of all, I think I'm just as surprised as you to originally find out the way we did that the Devils were leaving Binghamton. And, you know, here in Utica, with the Vancouver Canucks organization as the AHL affiliate since 2013, it kind of was a situation of not if, but when the Canucks were going to move their AHL affiliate out west. And that was a quote by Comets president Rob Ash, and he said he actually helped the Canucks move out because of, you know, as a developmental league, having to prospect 3,000 miles away from Vancouver just was not a realistic thing forever. But it did open the door for establishing, or I should say re-establishing, the AHL in Utica, and now it opened the door for the New Jersey Devils to come back to the place where they actually were originally. You have to remember that the New Jersey Devils were the first ever AHL affiliate in Utica as the Utica Devils from 1983 to 1987. So when I look ahead to, you know, this Sunday and the whole season coming up, it definitely was last year one of the strangest things to not have any fans in the building, right? Because it was completely silent while I was there as media covering games. And the Adirondack Bank Center here in Utica is actually known across the league as being loud, as having these fans protect the top of you, as being full. The Adirondack Bank Center, Utica Comets, have the longest streak in American Hockey League history of continual sellouts, consecutive sellouts for seasons in a row, not just games. So I really highly expect that the Utica crowd will be back in full force, because this is a team, this is a community that supports its team. And when you think of sports in this area of central New York, think of the Utica Comets, now in their 9th season here. And actually, just down the road, the town that the Comets name comes from is Clinton, New York, where the Clinton Comets played back at Clinton Arena, which is actually a facility listed on the National Historic Register in 2010. So they were Hockey USA in 2018 and had the Blue Jackets game, preseason game. So this is a hockey area. So I highly expect the crowd to be back in full force. The one thing I should just note for you, though, is that obviously we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. The Adirondack Bank Center did start allowing about 4 fans back inside toward the end of last year, once the state and local governments allowed 10% capacity. And Comets Chief President Rob Ash, who's also president of the company that runs the Utica Auditorium, Mohawk Valley Gardens, told me that he actually purposely last year worked with the league to have most of the team's home games at the end of the season, knowing that those passionate fans might have a chance to attend games as situations got better. There was a catch, which was you either needed to be fully vaccinated and show proof of it, or you needed to have a COVID-19 negative test result come back within a day or a few days before the game, which was a challenge. So even though they allowed 400 fans back, they never hit those numbers, according to the arena staff. But this year, as of this week, there's a new sign on the door that says if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. If you're not vaccinated at the moment, you do have to wear the mask, but that's the requirement. That's it. So I fully expect that this coming Sunday, on the 4th anniversary of the first ever AHL game in Utica, which was the Utica Devils, that they'll be in full force and cheering on their team.
That's awesome to hear. I'm really excited to hear that the fan base is buying in. I'm really excited that they get to go see this team. There's a lot of excitement about this team. A lot of good players that are on this team this season. Who are you really excited to watch this year?
Yeah, as we've seen the roster kind of fill out over the past few days, once the amateur tryout opportunity was dealt with, and once the New Jersey Devils started making their cuts to their roster and sending players to their AHL here, there really seems to be this kind of excitement in the Devils organization this year. And I know you guys have talked about this a lot too on previous episodes, that they're using the hashtag a new era. And it really does feel like something new is happening in the Devils organization, which now includes the Utica Comets. And from my personal conversations with New Jersey general manager Tom Fitzgerald, to Comets general manager Dan McKinnon, and now Comets head coach Kevin Dineen, everyone has articulated a desire, and not just a want, but to quote head coach Dineen, actually a mandate to build a winning culture. And each of them have said that in kind of a different way. They say it starts not only with the NHL club, but with the AHL club, where culture just as much as skills are being developed. And so with New Jersey making all of these offseason signings that we saw to make that happen, with plenty of top picks in recent years, the Devils have started to put action to their words and build that depth in the organization over the past few months. And that overflow of talent really does mean that good players are going to be here in Utica with high potential, taking the ice for the Comets this season. And so while I don't feel like I can name a specific player at the moment, just because of how fresh this is, I mean, you do look at guys like, let's say, Alexander Holtz, right? The 7th overall pick in 2020, who just had a stellar training camp with the Devils and was on their training camp roster until basically the last moment. You look at him and wonder, what can he do? How can he develop right in front of our eyes here in Utica as he's getting this top 6 play on a consistent basis? And you look at even a veteran like Chase DeLeo, who was signed, and you wonder how he could advance his game and help out the younger guys that are around him, which is something that Tom Fitzgerald told me over the summer, that he wanted veterans to really teach these really young guys this organization has how to win. So we will get to know these players better over the next few weeks, and those storylines will develop. I think that the bigger interest right now is looking at all of them collectively. How will this Devils AHL team improve this year? Because it's a franchise, an AHL franchise, that's not made the playoffs since the 2016-2017 season back in Albany. And since 2010's only made the playoffs 3 times, only making it past the first round once. So now making the playoffs is not everything. The true measure of an AHL team is how many of its prospects develop to a point where they can make a significant impact at the NHL level. But at the moment, more than any one player, really, I'm just thinking, well, how does this team come out and start to live up to that winning mentality and winning culture that the Devils top staff has just been talking about nonstop?
That was one hell of an answer, David. So let's look at the goaltending position. I'm going to make you say specific players here. But we got Nico Dawes, somebody who led the AOHL in save percentage 2 seasons ago. Kind of had a weird year, had to go to Germany because his season got canceled. But he wasn't bad last year. He was pretty good. He was just the backup to a more established guy over in that league. Then you got Akira Schmid. I believe he led the USHL in save percentage last season. Somebody who kind of bounced around, couldn't really find his groove, but now looks like he's in a much better position. And then you got Scott Wedgwood, currently with the Devils, but I think you imagine he's going to get some games in Utica this year. What is your assessment of the goaltender position?
Yeah, it's interesting because the goalie position was, when I spoke with Tom Fitzgerald, the New Jersey Devils general manager, he actually put in the conversation, it was not out of the question for him, he said, to actually draft the goalie with one of their first-round picks this past year. And I know, obviously, that didn't happen, and that would have been very interesting. But the New Jersey Devils organization historically is known for its goaltending, and that's one of its strengths. And I don't doubt that that's something they want to continue with, not just because you need goaltending to win games, but because they want to develop that in the AHL so that you have these guys ready to show up. When you mentioned Dawes and Schmid, they are both rookies, like you mentioned. Remember that those Devils, they do have the 4 men on the injured reserve, so we should see players come down when they activate some of those 4 players as early as before the end of this week. So one of those players could be Scott Wedgwood. Actually, I spoke with Thomas assistant coach Sergei Brayler earlier this week, the Devils legend and 3-time Stanley Cup champion. We actually asked him specifically at media this week, what do you make of having these young goalies in Dawes and Schmid and even Wedgwood, who's been around a little bit? And he said that the coaching staff does recognize that they're young. It's really on the defense to play well in front of them, whether they have the puck or not, to make the goalies' lives easier. And maybe that sounds like a typical answer, but he says that these guys are here for a reason too. I mean, I think Dawes also, I don't know if you just mentioned this, but I think he was an OHL All-Star in 2019-2020 season, 2 years ago. So they're not like lacking any kind of experience. They're just professionals now. They don't have the experience getting paid to do this. And so that's the whole point of the American Hockey League. And I think a guy like Scott Wedgwood, if he does get time down here, which we could, put a good probability on, but I'm not general manager, so I won't try and predict that. I'll just report what we have now is the 2 guys who are here. When you have those guys, they just need that professional experience, and they're going to start getting it as early as this Sunday. And how they do from there, I think, will really define the situation. But they're pros now. The coaching staff knows that, and they're going to be doing everything they can to get them ready, because they'll be thrown into the fire or put right on the hard, cold ice in just 4 days.
All right, David, I know you got a newscast to put together. You got a lot to do, so I'm going to leave you with this one question. It's Kevin Dineen's first season. A little bit of a surprise that they made a change at head coach. What do you think he's going to do this first year? You've talked to him a little bit. What are your first impressions?
Well, first of all, it's been a pleasure talking with Kevin Dineen, and it's been a pleasure talking with any of the coaches and players in person again, because relationship building and getting to know someone is so much better in person. Even if the AHL rules say we have to stay 12 feet away with masks on, so much better than being on Zoom already. So far my impressions of him these past 2 weeks since Thomas camp started is that he's a genuine person, and I do look forward to talking with him more. But while it is his first season as the Utica Comets head coach and also his first year with the Devils AHL franchise, it is by no means, and I'll make that clear, it's by no means his first year. That would be a complete misstatement almost to say this is his first year, except for the fact that obviously it's his first season with the Comets, first time with this organization. But I mean, look at his track record, right? He started as an AHL head coach in 2005 for 6 years before becoming an NHL head coach for 8 years. He won a Stanley Cup during that time. Then he was back in the AHL as a head coach for 2 more years before coming to the Comets in the head coaching position now. And he also coached Canada's national women's hockey team and won a gold medal in the Olympics just a few years ago. So this is not a guy who's lacking head coaching experience that's new. He's just new to the organization, and the entire organization is being reintroduced to the Utica area as the Utica Comets. So I think that from what the players have said, he's brought kind of this style with him as when he was a player, this kind of expecting the whole Devils want for them to win, a hard-nosed kind of play. This is a guy who was captain of 3 different NHL teams, and he's bringing that so far to the training camp and pushing guys to be fast, to be strong. And again, it's something that the Devils organization wants. It's something that their AHL franchise really needs because they haven't had a winning team over the past few years. But it's something that seems that Dineen's the right guy to try and get everyone on track, keep them on track, and move them forward. I think the best thing about Dineen coming in as head coach is that it's not like someone else got fired for him, right? You see that so often where some coach got fired or they got let go, and he's the guy, the new head coach is supposed to step in and fix everything. Kevin Dineen is filling a spot for Mark Dennehy, who was promoted into a scouting position within the organization. So Dineen coming in here, bringing his history as a player, as a coach at various different levels, it should be really And he talks a lot about the thing that he likes most about doing this is building those relationships on a personal level with the players too. They're actually up in Lake George today, up north, doing some team building. So, those three aspects, I guess, are the three-pronged plan that it just seems that, wins are not everything, but I have a feeling that not only will the team develop great prospects under Dineen, but he has the ability to bring some wins to.
Well, David, before I let you go, I want to kind of give you a shot to see what can the fans expect from you at WRT. Are there going to be writings on the website? Or are there going to be, I know you guys are the home of the Utica Devils, so what can they expect from your coverage?
Yeah, WUTR, no worries. It's WUTR, FXC, ABC and Fox television station in the Utica area. But if you want to follow the coverage of the Utica Comets, as we're the home of the Comets, so we have extra access to coaches and players and doing feature stories. Definitely go check out my Twitter, which you mentioned before is my name, David Edelstein, Edelstein. David Edelstein on Twitter. And also go to cnyhomepage.com. That's for Central New York, cnyhomepage.com. We really primarily focus on the Comets. It's the big thing here, like we just talked at length about. And I'm super excited to follow your guys' coverage, too, because this is, I'm sure we see the HL changes all the time. Players up, players down, rosters change. It's going to be really fun to get a chance to do this. And, you guys just as much as me covering the teams and what they're doing.
David Edelstein, thank you so much for spending some time with us. We're going to have you on again. This was great. We love talking Utica. We've been trying to have more AHL coverage because people are hungry for the prospects and they want to know what the rest of the Devils organization are doing. So, David, thanks so much for coming on.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, David. That's David Edelstein, sports director, WURT, ABC,
WUTR.
Upstate New York.
WUTR.
I can't read right now.
That's my fault. My dyslexia. Oh, I don't know if I have dyslexia. I don't want to disparage people with it. But
Wait, is it WURT?
I mixed up the letters. It's WURT. WURT ABC.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I had it right.
No, WUTR. Sorry. WUTR. WUTR ABC in Central New York. CNYhomepage.com. See, Sam, we're both having technical difficulties today.
Yeah, the phone systems. I don't know. I don't know if it was. Sometimes I think that people that live in upstate New York, their cell phones never work. It's kind of weird.
You might not be wrong about that.
Yeah. Getty27 says, geez, hockey started and we still got to wait for the Devs to get a game in. LGD can't wait on the YouTube Live. David Decker says WKRP in Cincinnati. Mercer for Calder. A little too early for that, Matt Junio. David Decker with the muscle. David Decker, you take the tailgate, go to Todd's Lounge 973 on opening night. Where the live podcast. It's going to be broadcast. We're going to have some music. We're going to have some fun. It's going to be an amazing time at Todd's Lounge 973. I hope I can put it all together. It's a big production. We're gonna have cameras everywhere. We're gonna have cameras everywhere. Hopefully we come out with the victory, is what they would say.
But yeah,
wow.
we only got Sam. It's gonna be a fun night because we're already up against it. We got Rob Taub. NHL.com. He got a new job, and he's coming on the podcast. He's going to talk to us.
Formerly of the New York Post. I missed his articles on the New York Post.
I know he was doing some good work, but now he's at NHL.com. He's doing some. He's coming for your job, Sam. He's a producer over there.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So he's doing big things. We're excited to get him on. We've always gotten along good with Rob. Well, we've tried to get along with Rob. Sometimes our conversations go off the rails, and but that's why we keep having him on. We got to have dissenting opinions. He is an Islanders fan.
He's a Stan Fischler disciple, and anybody that's associated with Stan Fischler is a Hall of Famer to me.
That's exciting. So, but Sam, I do want to say I am excited, and I was talking to Dan Rice about this, but I want to get up to a Utica game. I told you this.
Ooh.
We got to play the schedules, right?
I don't even know where Utica is.
I want to do a weekend. It's in New York. I mean, you knew that.
Well, I know it's in New York, but like in relation to, is it above Albany? Below Syracuse,
perpendicular. I don't know. Whatever.
It's somewhere in New York, right?
I think it's near the border, but I got to double check. But no, so we're going to do Devils on a Friday. This is what my hope is. Devils on a Friday, Utica on a Saturday, Riveters on a Sunday, off on a jet plane back to Tampa. That's my hope, Sam. See if we can work it out.
Is it on the schedule? Is there a weekend?
I gotta find it. I got to find it.
Oh, you better look at the schedule before you start making these bold goals of yours.
I can make it happen, Sam. Come on. I've done crazier things with littler expectations, so I am excited. You have Rob's number. I sent you that, right? That happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should I be calling him now? I thought it was supposed to be at 7:45 p.m. I mean, I'm all screwed up right now because normally this is an hour podcast, right? But you're getting 3 times the fun. You're getting 3 times the fun, and this is a massive undertaking of a Devils season preview. Again, we are the folks that had no Devils hockey for 9.5, 10 months, but somehow we podcasted more than we could have imagined. We can talk Devils all day. We can talk Devils all day, but I'm not going to say the other part.
Just all day. Only all day.
Yeah, just all day.
Then we go to bed at night.
Yeah.
Anyway, so give Rob a call, bring him on. We got a lot of interesting topics. He's going to talk about the Metropolitan Division to start. He's going to kind of focus on what that division's going to look like. He's going to come here and simp for his Islanders. He's going to love on his Islanders, and we love Rob, so we're going to give him a chance to do it. But he's going to talk mostly Devils. He's going to give his opinion. He's going to tell us about his new job. I'm excited to hear about his new job. I want to know where I get that quality Rob Taub content. But there's so much to talk about with this team. This is why we needed the 3 hours of podcasting. We needed to talk Utica. We needed to talk prospects. We needed to talk, where is this team just in terms of the league? We want to know what people think of this team within the league. We want to know what the locals think about it, the beat reporters. We want to know everything about this Devils team. So that's why Rob Taub is coming on. He's going to just explain kind of the outlook that he has from a little bit of he's got the inside perspective. He covers the Devils a little bit, but he's got a little bit of an outside perspective as well. So he's going to bring that unbiased juice. Unless you talk about the Islanders, then he is biased as all hell. But so we're excited to talk to Rob in a couple minutes. What do you think of the Metropolitan Division? I hear a lot of people calling it the best division in hockey. It's hard to combat that, but I think it's going to be one of those years where they keep feeding off each other. Like maybe only one team has over 100 points at the end of the season, but you got those middle 6 teams. You got the Capitals, the Rangers, the Devils, the Carolina Hurricanes, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Philadelphia Flyers. Those 6 teams kind of have a consensus that who the hell knows what's going to happen this season. The Pittsburgh Penguins just put a whooping on the Tampa Bay Lightning, the defending Stanley Cup champs, on their home court. That arena was rocking. I know that their national anthem singer got that arena so crazy pumped because she had a very scary battle with COVID this summer, and she's vaccinated. But she's back. Her lungs are back to normal. She's back and crushing those national anthems. So they were rocking, and the Pittsburgh Penguins came in and they did a number on them. And my hero, Brian Boyle, my favorite player, got a goal after he earned himself a contract with that Penguins team. But they did it without Crosby. They did it without Jake Gensel. They did it without Evgeny Malkin. You got to give them credit where credit's due. The Penguins, I thought that this might be the year. Tristan Jarry looked pretty bad last year. The defense is a lot older. They're missing, they got Marino, but besides him, Marino and Letang are a good duo. But besides them, I'm not big on Matheson. I'm not big on a lot of the other moves that they made. So, but they came in and they put a whooping on Tampa. So, but look, it's Sam. He's back.
I'm back. I'm back with our second guest. He's a good friend of the podcast. He got a new job. I'm going to miss him at his old gig because I read all of his articles. He's a producer now at NHL.com. His name is Rob Taub, and you can find him on Twitter at rtaub_. Rob, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, guys. It's great to be back, and I'm very excited that hockey's finally here.
Hockey is finally back. No, but you got a lot more hockey than we did last year. I'm going to give you the floor for 2 seconds just to talk about the excitement that you've had with the past two Islander seasons.
Yeah, the excitement has been through the roof. I've been surrounded. This team has been a part of my life for 27 years now, and the last 2 years have just been, it's been over the moon with what's gone on with the team and just the way that they're run and the new arena coming this year. Everything is just, all the stars are aligning for them to have a really, really special season. And the fact that a lot of people are expecting them to be Stanley Cup favorites and to be contenders and to make it to the Stanley Cup, it's a little uneasy. I'm not used to that, but that comes with winning, and that's what makes it so exciting. And I'm just ready to get it started tomorrow.
Oh yeah, and I don't know why they're making us wait, Rob. You're starting on a Thursday. We're starting on Friday, but
they always do that. They have the Rangers play first, Islanders play second, Devils play third. It's just the way it is.
So let's talk about hockey on the ice, the future, what's looking ahead. I want to talk about the Metropolitan Division first and foremost because it seems like it's the best division in the league, but it might have the least amount of 100-point teams because of that. What's your assessment of the Metropolitan Division? The Islanders really look like the only lock team so far.
I don't think that they're the only lock team. I disagree with that. Carolina, they're probably as good as the Islanders. I know they haven't been able to put it together in the playoffs, but Carolina's a very good team. They were one of the best. They won their division last. I know the goaltending situation is a little iffy, but that team, their speed, their defense is still good. They brought in Kotkaniemi. They brought in some pieces that they can probably find their way under Rod Brindamore. But I think that the heavy hitters, of course, for the Islanders, I say the Hurricanes. I think Washington. I think this might be the year where things fall up, just like I'm going to say with Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh won last night. They look very impressive, but the Lightning look like they were asleep, like every other team does when they do the cup ring ceremony. But I think the division is the best in hockey. I've been saying it for a long time now, from top to bottom. I know you still have the Devils and the Blue Jackets, who might be, you could say, the bottom feeders, but they're not the same teams that they were. I think the Devils are going to be better. I think Columbus is going to be. They're going to give teams a hard time. I know they're not a John Tortorella coach team anymore, but they got some guys there. They got a Patrick Laine. They got a Zach Werenski. They got some guys there that can break games open. And, I don't know what to think about the Flyers because I will not trust Carter Hart. And I've been saying it since the Islanders played against him in the playoffs 2 years ago. Something about him just seems off. I know they redid their defense, brought in Ristolainen, brought in Ryan Ellis, and that's going to be the biggest thing is their defense going to be good enough to hold up with some of the best, some of the teams in the Metro? We'll see. I think their offense is stagnant. I think behind Couturier and Giroux and Van Riemsdyk, I don't think they have much to offer. So that team, I could see them taking a huge step back, just like I could see the Penguins taking a huge step back. I think they're getting older. I know they're going to be without Crosby and Malkin, who knows for how much longer. And I don't trust Tristan Jarry after what I saw from him in the playoffs last year either. So, I don't want to make this where like it's all about the Islanders, where them and the Hurricanes are the favorites. And I forgot to mention the Rangers. I need to see it. I really need to see it. I know they revamped their lineup, brought in the toughness. They needed to do that. But it'll be interesting to see, when teams start to really get in their grill. Are they gonna falter like they did the past few years? Or are they actually gonna, show some stones? So a lot of interesting questions, but I do think the division is the best in the game, and I will stand by it.
And here's the thing about the Rangers. They brought in the toughness. They brought in Ryan Reeves, obviously, and he's talking a bunch of gunk about PK Subban, and we can get into that if you want, but
it was unintentional. It was unintentional.
Yeah, I mean, they're making something out of nothing. It's like when, the football coaches try to make motivation after a big hit against them. It's like, oh, they're headhunting. It's like, oh, get out of here. Whatever. But they did lose Buchnevich, and they replaced him with Barclay Goodrow. And Goodrow was the third best player on that Lightning third line with Yanni Gordon, Blake Coleman. So I'm not big on the Rangers. I'm not going to lie to you. If they get good goaltending, I think they'll definitely be in the discussion for the playoffs.
It's a big. Well, you mentioned the goaltending. That's a big question because Shesterkin wasn't as impressive as everyone thought he was going to be last year. And I know Georgiev is not a terrible backup option, but their goaltending is still a question mark. I know they just signed Shesterkin to that long-term deal, so they think he's the guy. He's got to show it. I mean, I thought last year, I thought he was underwhelming at points. I thought he gave a lot of soft goals in some bad games. So that's another question mark with that team. I mean, of course, their offense it's probably going to be one of the best in the league. Their defense I'm still iffy on their defense. Look, you have a Norris Trophy winner. You got to give them some credit. But next to that, and you have Ryan Lindgren, who I really like. He's a pain in the ass to play against, which I really like about him. But it's the rest of that defense, that they need to build big things from. But I don't think they're ready to take that next step yet. But we'll see.
Okay, yeah. I'm kind of on that let's see thing with the Rangers too. But let's move to the Devils. The Devils made a lot of big moves this offseason. Dougie Hamilton, biggest among them. He seems to be a guy who really separates the old school crew and the new analytics department. The analytics guys think that he's the bee's knees, top 5 defenseman in the league. The old school crew people say you quote unquote can't win with him. Yada yada yada. What is your thoughts on the Dougie Hamilton signing? Is he enough to fix this Devils defense?
I think he is. The one thing I've said to you guys in the few times I've joined you over the past couple of years is they needed a number 1 defenseman. Been saying it forever, and now they got it in Hamilton. I think he's going to strive here. I think he's going to actually turn that Devils defense on it too. I think he's going to turn the whole team on it here. I think the kind of player he is, the ability he brings, and not even just that, the power play. He's a power play specialist, something also the Devils have lacked in the past few years. And I think he's really, really going to be something for that power play. And, just to keep going, that their defense is starting to build out kind of nice. I like the Ryan Graves move. I know he's a former Ranger draft pick, didn't do things there, but he found his way in Colorado. And I thought that was a savvy move by Tom Fitzgerald. And I just like what they're building right now. There's a few guys that they got, still wait in the wings. Even I saw a highlight from Shakir Mukhamadoun, if I got that right. Saw a highlight from him in the KHL yesterday, and he looks like he could be a stud. I mean, there's still some question marks with the defense. You gave up on a Will Butcher. I like that they kept Damon Severson, and I like that they're getting younger on the blue line, and I like that they're getting faster. They need to be faster. Even a guy like PK Subban, I think he can actually have a good year this year, playing with someone else who probably could, kind of complement him. And I love the Hamilton move. I've said it since day one. I thought the Devils were the right place for him, and I think he's going to be a great addition.
Yeah, I think that at least in the beginning, he's going to be great. He looked great in the preseason. He gives the Devils exactly what they've needed. Yeah, well, listen, okay. I'm on the hype train, Rob. Don't knock me off. So, speaking of hype, there's a lot of hype around Jack Hughes this offseason. it just seems like everybody's talking about Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes he's going to get 70 points. He's going to get 80 points. He's going to get 1,000,000 points. And that hype has turned into a lack of hype for the Devils' other number 1 overall pick. We used to hear about dreams of Patrice Bergeron when it came to Nico Hischier. Those seem to be on the wayside. So I'm curious of what your thoughts are, Rob. What do you think is Hischier's ceiling, and do you think he can take it to another level this season?
I definitely think he could take it to another level. Look, they were without him for a good amount of the season last year, and it hurt him. It really did. It hurt him in the beginning, and I don't think he was the same player that we know he could be. And you mentioned that he's not getting the same love as Jack Hughes, but Hischier's the captain now, and your captain doesn't have to be the flashy one. I'm not saying that he should. I'm not saying that he couldn't be, but he's going to lead by example. And I think he's a quiet leader. He seems like he's very reserved, and he's the kind of guy that they wanted to be the future of this team in the leadership department. And I think he's going to have a tremendous year. I think he's going to have a huge year. I think the Devils' offense as a whole is starting to get better. Just in general, I mean, they've got some good draft picks also in the pipeline, and Alexander Holtz, who knows, maybe he could be here next year. You never know, or even before the end of this year. Depends on what happens. But I think that they're building, and they keep building. Hischier is the kind of guy that they wanted to build around, and so is Jack Hughes. But I think you shouldn't worry as much about Hischier. I think he's going to be a solid presence this year. I think this might be his real breakout year, because now he's healthy. The team is better. The team overall is better, and he's got weapons to play with now. So I think you shouldn't worry about him as much. I think he's going to be really good this year.
That's great to hear. I love hearing that. I'm on the Hischier train. I'm letting the Hughes bandwagon fill up, and we'll let that leave the station. I'm going to jump on the Hischier train with just a couple of us and have a party over there. All right, before we let you go, Rob, I need 2 bold predictions from you. 1, I need one about the Devils. Is anything at all about the Devils? And then 2, I want you to look at your team, the Islanders. You got like 14 of our ex-guys and our ex-GM. So give me a bold prediction about one of the ex-Devils and the Islanders, and then give me a bold prediction about the Devils.
I'm not a big fan of making predictions. I'll make one bold. I'll do one bold one. Kyle Palmieri scores 30 goals this year. I think with him on the first line, playing with Matthew Barzal and Anders Lee, I think they could be one of the best trios in the league. And I think he's going to really hit his stride here. I think the amount of money and commitment that the Islanders have put into him this offseason shows that they know that he's something special. And I know we scored 20 goals, years ago, like in the past few years, but he had an off year last year, and then he really showed his stuff in the playoffs. But I think now playing with a guy like Barzal, I'm not gonna discredit Hischier or whoever the Devils had. Barzal's on a different level when it comes to skill and speed and playmaking ability. So that's my bold prediction: is he scores 30 goals this year. With the Islanders as a whole, it's cup or bust. And I think that they can win the Stanley Cup. I don't like to say it because it makes me feel very queasy because I'm not used to it. But I do think that I think they will get over the hump, because losing the way that they've lost the last years, it just keeps fueling the fire. And I think that they could be better than Tampa this year. Tampa lost a lot of pieces. I think they're the best. I think they're the best overall team in the East. I know people want to shout out Toronto, still want to put Boston there, maybe Washington. I think the Islanders have shown they can beat them all. They can play with whoever, and they can beat them. So that's my 2 bold predictions. Is I think the Islanders do get into the Stanley Cup final. I'm not going to say that they win it. You'll have to wait a few months for me to say that. And my bold prediction for the Devils is I think that they steal the wild card spot.
Ooh, I like that.
I
like that. I like stealing.
I'll base it on because what I said before. I think the Flyers. I don't know what to think about them. And I think I told you guys back in the summer. I think and I told you guys just before. This is the year that the Capitals might fall off the cliff and might finally start to see, the end of their era of playing, like being the real competitive teams in the Metro. The entire landscape of the division has changed over the past few years, and it's just changing even more now. Now that the Islanders and Hurricanes, so basically they're the class of the division. I'm not going to say that Washington and Pittsburgh aren't there, but I just don't think. I think that they're getting older, and I think that their years of, I think their time being, the top dogs is over.
So, Rob, before we let you go, I just want to give you a sec to kind of promote what you're doing. You got this new gig. You're moving up and on in life, and I just want to kind of give you a chance to tell all the fans who haven't gotten the update of where they can find your work.
Yeah, so I'm not blogging much anymore. I can't really do that now that I'm part of the league. But I'm one of the behind-the-scenes guys now with all the stories that you see on NHL.com. Before they go out, I'm checking them, making sure everything's accurate, adding video clips. If there's a goal, like let's say tonight, like we just saw from Caps are up 1-0, like if they wanted me to add that in or even cut that, things like that. Just I'm more of a jack of all trades, behind the scenes guy, and basically doing the same also with News 12 and producing there. And just building stories, building stuff out for people to enjoy web-friendly content.
There you go. We gotta love the internet. The internet's it's helping to keep this sport alive. And Rob, really appreciate you coming on. We're gonna have you on again soon. Obviously, we always have you on. But yeah, maybe we'll get that exclusive Stanley Cup prediction for the Islanders in a couple months. But we'll be sitting here waiting for it. All right, Rob. All right, thanks so much for coming on.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys having me. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. That is Rob Taub. NHL.com. New gig there. He's hilarious on Twitter. Have you seen him on Twitter? I was looking at this tweet.
I retweeted stuff all the time.
About 11 hours ago. Ryan Reeves versus Tom Wilson. Ryan Reeves versus Tom Wilson. Ryan Reeves versus Tom Wilson. It's like this long tonight's must-see list. Hysterical. Just absolutely hysterical.
Oh man, that's funny. That's an exciting matchup with the Rangers and the Capitals. Everybody is excited that Ryan Reeves made it back because he was. That's stupid. Did you hear what he said, Sam?
Tell me the drama. I haven't been paying attention.
He's the one who said that he thought the hit by Subban was dirty. Ryan Reeves calling someone else dirty really is the pot, isn't it?
So he's actually okay, right?
Yeah, he's playing tonight.
So I'm thinking this guy's out for a year. The way the Rangers were whining about it. And he's playing tonight?
Yeah.
So you know what that tells me, Nick?
What's that tell you?
Are you paying attention, Nick? We're on a podcast.
I'm listening.
Hello?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right. Do you know what this means?
What? What's that?
He embellished the whole thing. I actually felt bad. I thought it was a Joe Theismann type.
He's like, I'm just limping off the ice. Look at me. All
right. Well, I refrained from talking trash about that whole incident because I'm thinking, okay, it's not nice. He's really hurt. But if he wasn't really hurt, then I'm going to talk a little trash. Just because he can't skate doesn't mean he has to blame PK Subban for knocking him down. You know?
It was such an overreaction. It looked like the entire game the Rangers were trying to make it a thing. Like Chris Kreider kept getting in his face, and who was the other guy that was screaming at him? And there was just a lot. It was just sorry, my phone is going crazy. It was just it was
Here, let me
so
help
over
you
the
out.
top. It was I'm good. We're good.
Are you sure?
We're good. Yeah, we're good.
I'm willing to go solo, Nick.
No, we're good. I got it. I'm on top of it. I had to take care of something real quick. It's taken care of now. We're good to go.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's like, was it Kreider who like dropped the gloves and like pulled him and then like hugged him and then was trying to fight him and then Subban was like, I'm not about this life. And then they gave Subban the penalty for smiling, even unsportsmanlike, because he smiled when Kreider tried to fight him. You know, it was just like they were trying to make it something that it wasn't. And it seems like, here's the thing, is that the Drury, the GM over there in New York, has been like, toughness. And it feels like that they're just trying to formulate that. Like, they're not tough. They're trying to be tough. And if you've ever gone to high school in your life, you know those people who tried to be tough but weren't actually tough. You know what I mean? Like, big guys like, oh, look at me, oh, I'm all tough. And it's like, okay, great. And like, listen, Reeves is a legit tough guy, but I don't think the Rangers are a tough team. They had a Barclay Goodrow. He doesn't bring grit. He's the kind of guy that's like, again, he's the third guy on that line of Yanni Gourde and Blake Coleman. The Seattle Kraken and Calgary Flames got the good parts of that line. Barclay Goodrow was the guy that we were floored when he netted the San Jose Sharks a first-round pick. You know, and he did well for the Lightning. He fit a role. But that's not a role the Rangers need. The Rangers don't need to tinker. They don't need little pieces to fill holes because they got this superior top six. They have a good top six. Mika Zibanejad or Artemi Panarin, you know, they're good players, but they don't have, you know, a Steven Stamkos in the second line. They don't have, you know, Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov and all these insane players that they.
John Cooper as a coach.
Yeah, you know, and listen, I like Gerard Gallant as their coach. I was upset when he got hired there because I think he's going to do decently there. But I'm looking at that roster, and I'm like, okay, you got really good forwards, but like, and then again, they come out and Kravtsov. They're trying to trade him, but they want a top six forward for Kravtsov, and Kravtsov can't even make the team, or somebody who could become a top six forward. Like, get out of here! Like, this team is delusional, and that delusion is leaking into the team and the players, and it's causing them to be on the ice. And they started a fight with the Washington Capitals again today. Like, they think that toughness is fighting. Toughness is not fighting. Fighting can be a reaction to toughness, but you don't just start fights because you want to look tough. Like, it's dumb.
Yeah,
so that's my assessment of the New York Rangers.
You know, and you know what? It was very telling the other night with the whole PK Subban incident. Remember when we were live as it was happening last week, and you and I were just conversing, like, what are you trying to do, Kreider? What are you trying to do? You want the C on your jersey? You want that extra bump in pay?
Oh, can we talk about that?
Can
we talk about that they didn't name a captain and they named 6 assistant captains?
Ridiculous.
They named 6 assistant captains, Sam. Nobody was good enough to be captain, but we got 6 assistants. Everyone gets an A. You get an A, Sam. You get an A. Tin Rice is coming on next. He's getting an A. Rob, we're going to send Rob Taub. You're getting an A. Like, come on, get the hell out of here. That's like, it's like this team is a meme.
It's unbelievable what Tom Wilson has done to this organization.
He's so in their head. And honest to goodness, I was on the Ranger side for that. He was a criminal that night. But
yeah,
the reaction to it.
But the victim went too far. The victim went too far. Called the New York Rangers. You know, with that press release. That press release is one of my all-time favorites. Which they got in trouble for.
The press release, and then just their mentality. Like, the fact that they made such a big deal of the Subban thing. The fact that they're talking about the Subban thing days later, Sam. Days later.
Which tells me they're a bunch of whiners. They're a bunch of
the media
whiners.
members are buying into it, and they're, and like, me, I don't criticize the media because I work in the media. I try to keep that to a minimum, but just some of the things I was seeing from the media today, just outright calling it a slew foot, as if, like, stop it. Like, calling it a slew foot.
He's just a bad skater. Just jokes. Just jokes. Just jokes. I mean, I don't think Ryan Reeves has been known for his, skating skills. I mean, heck, did PK Subban purposely knock out Nico Hischier because there was a spat in the locker room? See, I'm making up stuff. That's how silly this whole thing is.
This is silliness, Sam. It is silliness.
But I do like drama. I do like the drama, but the problem is this thing is so silly, I can't even take the drama seriously.
It's manufactured, clearly. It's clearly
of course.
manufactured. And, like, that's never entertaining.
So what's going to happen? What's PK going to do the next time the Rangers meet the Devils?
Yeah,
is there going to be a fight?
He's going to try to fight PK. Like, really?
You know what? I hope it happens. You know why? Because the Devils have beef now. It's like next man up beef. Doesn't matter. You know what? I would dress 7 defensemen that night. That's when you dress 7.
Geertsen.
Yeah.
Bring in Geertsen. Give him some rock bottoms, dropping some people's elbows. Let's go, Geertsen.
How about this? I hope Lindy Ruff dresses them all. Let's have our regular 3 pairings on defense and take that 4th line and put 3 other D guys there. Bring up Kevin Ball.
Kevin Ball.
Just the biggest guys.
A Hoytuk.
I think it's a
Hoyevich. Sam, I'm never going to be able to say that name. That's never going to happen. Nope. It's like sure. Nikita. Bring up Nikita. Yeah. No,
I mean, the Devils have muscle now. I just hope they use it.
Colton White, somebody who can bring some muscle. And then, Ryan Graves is a guy, he doesn't fight a lot, but he's the guy I would not want to mess with in a dark alley. If you know what I'm saying.
Well, you know what? Ryan Graves' game is not an instigator, but if he has to be tough, he has to be tough. Dougie Hamilton is the guy right now, and knowing that blue line has his back, you would think. I mean, Yaros is big.
I will say this, Sam.
All of them are big.
This is where you miss Nathan Bastian. To bring a little bit of that toughness, that grit. And I believe he led the team in hits last year. He was somebody who brought some things to the table. They're going to miss him. They are going to miss him. He's not somebody that, like, screamed play me. You know what I mean? Like, his advanced stats weren't great because he wasn't a scorer. Those guys don't show up as much on those advanced statistics. But he's somebody who brought a couple of the other things to the table. Brought a big hit when you needed it. He was boxing people out in the box on offense. So he's making lanes for Miles Wood, who, had a career year last year, and Michael McLeod, who also had a career year last year. It's this. That's I guess they're gonna, and that's the thing is, like, you're gonna replace him with Andreas Janssen, or I don't even know who else. Studenich. That's such a drop off just because of, and not even because, like, no offense to those players, but such a drop off in what you're getting from him. Like, Janssen is not somebody who hits. Studenich is not really a hitter. They bring skill to the table, and obviously there'll be a better goal scoring unit with Janssen over Bastian, but it's just going to take away a little bit of that toughness that he really brought to the table.
Well, John on YouTube Live says, no, Bastian's role can be fulfilled by any competent hockey player who has size. We don't need grit.
I mean, we don't have them, though. Like, that's what I'm saying. We're replacing with Studenich. We didn't get a guy. We don't have a guy with size and grit. If we replace them, that's fine. but we didn't. We could say whatever you want. We didn't replace them. Even the guys they brought into camp, like Jimmy Vesey, he wasn't a guy like that. Mark Jankowski wasn't a guy like that. And Gauthier, Freddie Gauthier is not a guy like that. Like, they didn't bring those guys in. They brought guys who used to have skill or was going to play a different style of game. I don't see, even Vesey, Sean Fitzgerald says he wants Vesey to become a shot blocker and a penalty killer. Great. That's wonderful. That doesn't mean he's going to be a hitter or a trendsetter or somebody who's going to knock somebody's block off or start fighting. And I'm not a big fighting guy, but I think that it's good to have a guy who can do it. You know what I mean, Sam? I don't want to, something like Curtis Gabriel, somebody like, I don't need somebody like Curtis Gabriel. I need to put somebody on the roster there to fight people who's there to. But I love Curtis Gabriel. He's a guy. He's a guy really good in the line.
I like Curtis Gabriel. I like all big players. I'm just trying to cover your butt, Nick, because your feed was dropping. You're on there now.
Oh, okay. I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was getting choppy. Hey, we're just getting warmed up. The Devils haven't started the season yet. We'll have to figure this one out. See, this is why we don't do marathon podcasts, Nick. You know why?
That's not why.
No, I know.
Why?
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just joking around. I'm delirious right now.
That's okay.
All this Devils hockey
I'm supposed to be carrying
hour and 20
Sam.
minutes in. What's that?
We're not even close to done. We're not close. We're not, Sam. We haven't even.
We're not even going to the top of the hour. What's that?
I said we haven't even gotten to the original start time for this podcast. We haven't gotten to the 8:30 yet. We got so much more hockey content coming up. Dan Rice.
We're not even halfway over right now. This is the 2021-22 Devils. You know what? If anybody that gets stuck in traffic tomorrow when we drop the podcast and you're stuck for 3 hours, we can kill that time at Devils Hockey. Keep it here.
Or even better. How about you got to work in a good mood because you had no traffic and you get to listen to 2.5 hours at work of the Let's Go Devils podcast, State of the Fan Address.
Yes. And then while you're at it, if the boss isn't around, go to pucksandpitchforks.com as well.
Ooh.
Great blogs, great articles. Nick's stuff's there. Vinnie stuff's there. Dan Rice, who's going to be on soon, his stuff is up there. Amazing, right?
Yeah, Dan Rice, a new article out, and I've been trying to figure out, Sam, just peek behind the curtain. I've been trying to figure out how to promote his stuff because his stuff is unlike anything I've ever read, anything I've ever had work for me. He's been doing it for so long. He's so good at it. But he's got a different style, and I'm so used to the singular idea format is what I'm calling it. That's what I write on. I find an idea and I write about it, right? But he writes like Elliot Friedman. And, he's just like, here are my thoughts on everything that's happening around the Devils right now. It's like, oh, this is good stuff. I need to get this out to the masses. But you know about that Google manipulation. You got to get that SEO going. So I'm trying to get but go read his article that's out right now. Our pucksandpitchforks.com. He does a great recap of the preseason, everything that happened around there, and just kind of what his assessment is. He has great quotes from Lindy Ruff. He just kind of goes through all these sections. You got to check it out. It's a great piece. Pucksandpitchforks.com. But Sam, let me ask you before you get Dan on, what was your assessment of the preseason? Did you like what you saw?
I'm a little pessimistic at times because I'm wondering if it's really fool's gold or not. But this is what I do like. And this is not fool's gold. And this is why my prediction is going to be coming. That predictions on Pucks and Pitchforks, the memo that we got. So
yeah, that's coming out Friday morning.
What I do like. It's not about wins or losses. It's about what's the team's mindset. Where are they going right now? They're not dwelling on the past right now. There's a sense of optimism that this team is going places. Dawson Mercer, was not even a big surprise in camp. It was more like we knew he was going to be good, but man, did he really exceeded my expectations handling an NHL, roster, opposing roster. I think he's someone special. I'll even go as far as he may be the best one drafted in the 2020 draft, because there's something about him where he's mature beyond his years, and he's got a chip on his shoulder falling down to 18, right to the New Jersey Devils, and steered him away across the river to New Jersey versus going to the Rangers potentially in the next pick. So, with that said,
and can I jump on that point for just 2 seconds?
Yep.
Because Devils fans are devastated that we didn't get Braden Schneider, that he fell to the Rangers. The Rangers traded up ahead of us to 19 and took Braden Schneider, the defenseman. But the Rangers were trading up either way. Either the Devils take Schneider at 18 and then Dawson Mercer takes that incredible skill to New York, or we get Dawson Mercer, we lose out on Braden Schneider, and then we settle for Shakir Mukhamadullin. But I would take Mercer and Mukhamadullin over Schneider any day of the week, because Mercer looks like a stud.
Now think of what Tom Fitzgerald just did. He basically blocked him. I can't say what I want to say on air, but he blocked him, right? He blocked him, and maybe it could be in 10 years, 15 years from now, it could be the biggest move in Tom Fitzgerald's legacy with the New Jersey Devils. If everything, because can you imagine a line across the river, a Dawson Mercer, Capo Caco, and that other guy, I don't care.
Was it Sheedle? Well, I guess Sheedle's a center. Yeah, whoever it is. It's
you know what I'm talking about.
Lafreniere? Are you talking about Lafreniere?
Yeah, I call him I don't care. So Can you imagine going against that line for the next 10 years? And they're talented. That's a top-heavy line. But instead, you have Dawson Mercer, and the jury's still out on Shakir. The jury's still out. It's basically incomplete at this point.
It's still way early.
Yeah. Talk to us in 5 years, and look, that would not only put it over the top if he turns out to be an all-star defenseman with that size. That would be, and how did they get that pick? Blake Coleman, which was an unpopular move at the time. And that came via Vancouver. And I almost wanted to just bust David Edelstein's chops about, how Utica used to be Vancouver. Well, you know what? Everybody from, they're all coming to Jersey anyway.
Yeah.
Eventually, Luke Hughes.
Yeah. No. Yeah, and that's the thing. And here's the thing, is that you brought up Luke
Quinn Hughes.
Which,
I'm talking about Quinn Hughes.
Well, you brought
Vancouver.
up Luke Hughes, so I'm going to talk about Luke Hughes.
Yeah.
Because we keep talking about maybe Shakir Mukhamadullin is, maybe he'll be an all-star, maybe he'll be this. Maybe. We don't need him to do that, Sam. We got Luke Hughes, we got Kevin Ball, we got Koivic, we got Hoytuk, we have Ty Smith, who's very, very, very young still. Damon Severson's only in his, mid to late 20s. We have players on this team that can still play defense for a long, long, long time. Think about it. If Ty Smith is going to be in the top 4 for the next decade, and you sign Dougie Hamilton to 6 more years after the season, let's say Luke Hughes and Shakir Mukhamadullin don't come here for another 2 more years after this year, you're still in pretty good shape. You're not rushing to make any of these moves, because you're gonna obviously have to pay Ty Smith after the season, and that's gonna hurt a little bit. But you got another year left on the Severson contract. Maybe you give Subban a 1-year deal, or you get a veteran on a 1-year deal, and two of those guys are ready. But Ball, I would imagine, is ready to jump into the starting lineup next year. Ahoytuk and Vukovic are players that could jump into the starting lineup in a couple years. And there's a bunch of other defensemen that, and this is without signing or trading for anybody, Sam.
And what's really great? I mean, I'll make another analogy. If you remember the Atlanta Braves, the big bad Atlanta Braves in the 90s, and for maybe 15 years straight, always in the playoffs. Now, the end result, that's not what I'm talking about. Always consistently in the playoffs. And how did they get there? Farm system. That pipeline was always full. The drafting was incredible. And when you have a great farm system, suddenly, especially in the salary cap structure, suddenly money spent to players start to become wiser because you're not as desperate. Where if Damon Severson is the big free agent and you lose him to I'm making up a scenario, $9 million a year because he had a career year, $9 million a year.
I mean, Darnell Nurse got it, so
yeah. Well, Toronto Maple Leafs will pay a ridiculous amount, right? So they'll give Severson $12 million a year for 7 years or something stupid like that, right? Yeah. But there's no drop off in talent because you've got 4 prospects that can easily at a $750,000 entry level salary could fill that void, and you're not stuck with a big contract, dead weight on the books. And that's the importance of having a farm system. Now, the Devils the ownership group, HBSE, did rip it down, started from scratch. Do I agree with a lot of things they've done for the most part? But at some point, you got to put all the chips on the table. And, this team has got to make the playoffs. And I think what's standing in between the playoffs, now, getting into the playoffs right now, unfortunately, is that penalty killing units, because they're not getting the results, and I don't think any team has the talent offensively to have that kind of bad penalty killing percentage and be able to make it into the playoffs. So if they're going to get it done, they've got to get it done on special teams, because 5-on-5, I think the Devils are fantastic. I think they're fabulous.
I think
their power play is going to come along.
Yeah, well, Dougie Hamilton's going to help that. But here's the thing, Sam, is that Ryan Graves, the advanced statistics are flawed in certain areas, and I think penalty kill is one of them. Ryan Graves played the most minutes for the Colorado Avalanche penalty kill, and they had a top 10 penalty killing unit. I think that you can equate those two things, right, Sam? I think that's fair. So putting Ryan Graves on the top penalty killing unit for the Devils, does it fix it overnight? No. But you have a healthy Nico Hischier. He's another penalty killer. You have a much better Pavel Zacha. He can kind of just play his own game, play a little bit loose. And he was on the penalty kill last year, and the penalty kill was terrible. But I think that if he's not the guy on the penalty kill, it suits him a lot better. And then you add maybe a Siegenthaler, a Hamilton, or the fact of the matter is that you don't we had PK Subban and Damon Severson on our top penalty kill units last year, Sam. Damon Severson and PK Subban was our top penalty killing unit. What is happening? You have 2 offensive defensemen. That's what Subban right now is, an offensive defenseman. He is somebody who focuses on his shot. He should not be on. He shouldn't be on a penalty kill. Oh, you could make him if he's the 4th best guy on the line.
You only put PK out there as if you want to purposely slew foot Ryan Reeves. That's the only time you put him out there. Jokingly, of course.
If you but it's 8:30, so we got to call Dan Rice.
Oh, I know. I was just waiting for you to finish. But
no,
hey, why don't you
I
talk to? Well, why don't you talk to social media, because people want to talk to you, Nick. They don't want you to talk to me.
There's a lot of talks. Steve Tartas. You're saying a lot, Steve, but I'm assuming when you say they looked better with Holtz in the top 6 role than without. Right? I'm assuming you're talking about the New Jersey team in the preseason, and that's the one of the things that kind of threw me off a little bit, is that the Devils had something there with Hughes, Sharangovich, and Holtz. They looked phenomenal in that first game, and then Holtz got a little, he got a little banged up, and he didn't play for the rest of the preseason. So that's fine. So Holtz played in another game, and he looked phenomenal in that second game. And then they moved him on a different line. They moved him in a bottom 6 role. And clearly, I don't know what they were trying to figure out. Maybe Lindy Ruff had it in his head that he wanted the Kuokkanen, Sharangovich, Hughes line together, and the Zacha, Bratt, Hischier line together. Maybe he just had that in his head. But you got to pivot. Holtz looks great on that top 6. And saying that you sent him down to Binghamton because you didn't want to put him in a bottom 6 role, you didn't have to. You could have played him on this team. And they still can. I don't want to overreact to a preseason demotion to the AHL. It could last 2 games. It could be back with the NHL club. So, I like I said, I don't want to overreact. There are some injuries. People are going to get sent down. People are going to get back in the lineup. But I think that Holtz can absolutely – he has an NHL caliber shot. That in and of itself should get him in an NHL lineup, because the Devils couldn't finish last year. They need to finish. Holtz can finish. So the fact that they didn't put Holtz on the lineup, it confused me, but I get it. I actually have people come into my comments or in my DMs and tell me they think that, and these are people much smarter than me, people who are much better at hockey than me, but probably on the ice and off the ice. But they tell me that the AHL is not a bad development place. It can help players. So Kevin Dineen, we heard from David earlier that Kevin Dineen is just a phenomenal coach. He's been doing it for a long time. He helped the women's team win gold. So I like him bringing that winning mentality. He's got NHL coaching experience. So he knows what it takes to be an NHL player. So I'm excited to see what he does to Holtz. But Sam, you're back.
I'm back. I'm loving Kevin Dineen. I'm loving our guests that we've had on today. First time, David Edelstein, Rob Taub. And third on the deck, batting cleanup. His name is Dan Rice. One of my favorites, friend of the podcast, Pucks and Pitchforks contributor. You can find him on Twitter at @DRiceHockey. Dan, we're having a big live podcast across the street at Taj Lounge 973. You're going to be in the building in media credentials. Are you excited for Friday?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always great to be back on with you guys. I'm really excited for Friday. I think Syracuse has a pretty good chance to take out Clemson, and I think if they keep the game close, it'll be I'm really stoked to be in the building Friday. It's been a long time. I did the 2 preseason games, and that's kind of like, I guess, practice for us to kind of get back into the swing of things. But for myself, I didn't attend any games last year. Everything I did was virtual. And the previous season, whenever the last game was, that was the last game I was at. And the last time I was really at Prudential Center, aside from covering some women's hockey tryouts in early June over there, and that's not really the Prudential Center. It's kind of attached, but I'm stoked for Friday. I think they've had a lot of we've kind of been through this song and dance before, right, guys? Where it's a new season, new players, new young players. Everybody's excited. But I just feel like it's a little bit of a different feel this year. And I'd like to know if you guys agree with that. It just feels like there's a little something different this year. I don't know if it's, all of the links to the past kind of being gone now, or if it's just, the maturation of Nico and Jack and Ty Smith and those kind of guys, and kind of looking ahead to the next block of 4 or 5 years here. I think the future is really bright, and obviously you need a lot of things to break right, but I think it's an exciting time to be a Devils fan. I think everybody out there listening, and everybody that's going to be at the games and is going to be watching, I think they should be really excited, especially about the season, but Friday night as well.
Yeah, and just to answer your question, Aaron and Sam, I'm curious of what you think too. Sam left, so it's just me and you, Sam. Dan.
Oh,
but,
no, I can hold it. I can hold it.
I'm just curious. Sam, do you feel like this is different? Like, I felt like there was a difference in philosophy in 2019, and we were excited, but this feels different than 2019. Like, I was still a little worried. In 2019, we were hoping that PK was coming back from injury, and we were hoping that Taylor Hall was coming back from injury, and we were hoping that Nikita Gusev can adjust. But this one feels different.
Well, I think it's like what I said before. I don't know if you agree, Dan. It's a different mindset right now. It's a totally different mindset. There's the past is the past, and I think we've gotten over the hump, so to speak, although we need to get better results. And the reason why I say that is Ray Shiro's no longer here. Lou Lamoriello's no longer here. Tom Fitzgerald has made some bold moves. And it just seems like the way Fitzgerald has conducted himself through a very strange time when he took over as interim GM, that he's kind of like the players' GM right now, and the players have totally bought in. And as the pipeline is starting to mature, I think we're just on the cusp and verge of just eventually making the playoffs, but we just got to get that over that hump of the penalty kill. Do you think that, Dan?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with a lot of, if not all, of what you just said there. I think it's, you're not, there's not that, at least for me, like the way I've been looking at it is, you're not hoping that these guys are going to be good. You can almost see it, like at practice, preseason games, the games that we watched last year, some of the AHL games that I watched last year, the prospect tournament. You just see like there's a lot of different guys coming, and not everybody's going to be, on the opening night roster like a Dawson Mercer. But there is some good young talent there in the pipeline now, and the big change to Utica too. I think that's going to really get the guys excited, and maybe that spurs them on to win 2 or 3 more games down there, and you want to have those guys be successful too, because when they come up here, it's kind of going to be a clean transition, right? The idea is that they're all playing the same system, so if you just come in and you just pick up and you can play whatever role. But there's a lot to be excited about, and the penalty kill obviously has to be better. I think all special teams all around has to be better. And I just feel like these guys are like, they're not going to kind of defer to anybody else anymore. It's not going to, should I take this shot or should I slide it over to Paul Mary? There's not that, it's on you guys now. Like, this is it. This is the team. You guys proved last year that you can play against some pretty tough opponents. You had your ups and downs, but you proved you can do this. You can be successful, and now we've gone out, we've upgraded. We've added a Dougie Hamilton, a Thomas Tatar, a backup goalie who is probably a little bit better than Scott Wedgwood, but he was really good last year, when called upon too. So it's just, everything has just kind of been upgraded a bit and ticked up. And as I said, I think it's exciting, and you always want to try and be cautiously optimistic. As I said, we've been down this road before, but this just feels a little bit different, and I'm excited to see what happens beginning Friday night.
So before you came on, Dan, I got a question about why why Alex Holtz couldn't play in the NHL in the top 6. So that kind of leads me to my next point, is that we haven't talked much about Dawson Mercer on the podcast so far tonight, which is surprising because he's probably one of the biggest storylines going into Friday night. But Alex Holtz is not, because he got sent down to Utica. So, you saw a game where they were both playing. What's your assessment of the two? Why did one make the roster and one did not?
I think part of it might be Mercer has maybe more of an all-around game. At least that was the vibe and the impression that I've been getting from what I saw and what I heard from Coach Ruff, the 2 games I was there. And Holtz just needs a little bit more fine-tuning. I think Ruff mentioned something about he has to be able to kind of skate through all 3 zones, and he's, as a center like Mercer is, maybe he's tended to be a little bit more defensively responsible growing up, if that was the position he played all along. And whereas Holtz is kind of a winger and he can kind of freewheel. And make no mistake about it, the kid can shoot, he can score. But him starting in the AHL isn't the worst thing in the world for his development. I didn't think it would have been horrible for both of them to start down there. But, Mercer, as I kind of alluded to in the column that went up today, he just kind of forced his way. Like some of the other guys that were in camp that played center, they weren't bad, but he just really just forced the issue, and his attention to detail, his awareness in all zones. I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe gave him some time in the PK, just because he's a center and win a face-off here. If one of your centermen are in the box, God forbid something happens to somebody in the middle of the game. I just think it's Mercer really forced his way, and I don't think he's going to go through the whole season in the NHL. I wouldn't be surprised if he spends a trip or 2 down to the minors to just, whether it's to play in more games or get more ice time on a consistent basis. But we'll see, and we'll deal with those things, or they will deal with those things as they come, in front of them. It's a day by day kind of thing, and whatever we know now could be completely different a week from today. So we'll see what happens. We'll get some games under his belt. We'll see how he looks in real games, because we all know regular season's a step up from preseason. But they've all really praised him, and a guy like Dougie Hamilton praising him the way that he has, and some of the other things that have been said about him. It seems like the sky's the limit, and you hope that this is one of those first round picks that you have that you hit on. It's a crapshoot, right? It's always a crapshoot, and you think and you have information, but it's all development and how that particular player and person develops. And it looks like they found a real gem here, but again, cautious optimism. But it seems like you add him, a good player like that, to the mix with Nico and Jack, and you have yourself a 3-headed monster down the middle for a number of years here that'll make it a little difficult for their opponents, and kind of reversing the curse the way that it's been the last 10 or so years here.
So Dan, and I'm going to go a little off the board with this one, but
sure.
When I think of the Dawson Mercer thing and kind of earning his role, I've seen so many times the Devils go into the preseason and think they know exactly who the lineup is, and just kind of forcing the issue to make sure that is the lineup that went out. I've seen them not give Michael McLeod and Nathan Bastian chances when it seemed like they needed an extra game. I've seen them, but the one that this reminds me of is Jesper Bratt from 2018. When he came in, he was just supposed to be like a guy in training camp, an extra guy, an extra hand, a prospect that was going to go down to, I think it was Binghamton at the time, and develop. He was a 6th round pick. We signed him. and then he literally forced his way into this roster through pure just skill and just eruption. But when I try to think of anyone else, there's not a lot of examples of young guys getting that kind of shot. Is there somebody you can think of? You've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, not from, in recent memory, maybe not from the start of the season. There was always kind of that hype around Quinville and Blandisi. And then you kind of look back. Coming up, whether it's Mercer, Holt, Foote, guys of that ilk, and it just seems like that skill level is a lot different. I can't to answer your question other than Bratt and the obvious Nico and Jack forcing their way onto the roster, which we kind of knew. But Bratt is a very good example where he had a great camp that year and really surprised the coaching staff, I think, and management. And my memory is a little spotty, so I don't know if there was some injuries that maybe created some of that opportunity too. But when you get an opportunity, you have to take it and run with it and play the best you can. And Brad hasn't looked back since. I don't think he's played any AHL games unless it was conditioning assignments or something like that.
Yeah, it was a wild preseason that year because they had Drew Stafford too, who made the team as a PTO, and he looked really good in the beginning.
Oh,
of the season.
That era, yeah.
Yeah, it was, and they banked a lot of wins to begin the season, and I feel like that's something this team has to do again. Is that your assessment? Do you think this team, if they're gonna compete, do you think they have to come out of the gate swinging, or do you think that this is a team that could come back from a deficit?
I would 100%. They have to come out of the gate swinging. Get a jump on some of these teams that maybe haven't seen you in a long time. Not maybe they, not knowing what to expect. You've only played, them more than some of the other teams. They've only played X amount of opponents in almost 2 years. So to go up against these teams like Chicago and Seattle, which obviously nobody's been up against, but I think there's some other Western Coast teams in this first stretch of games, and I think you really have to take advantage of them. You have to win the games that you consider a team that's lesser than you. So and everybody's a professional. I get that, but the games against Buffalo and Ottawa and maybe Detroit even throw in that mix, like those are some of the games that we're going to expect them to win this year, and that maybe wasn't the case. It was maybe a toss up. I wouldn't say last year, but the previous year when they weren't really expected to go to the playoffs. I don't think, with the whole Taylor Hall saga and that went south really quick. So to answer that, yes, they have to get out of the gates quick. It would be pertinent. I don't know if they can play catch up. Maybe they can. Maybe they can gel into a good team as time goes on. But it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And we've seen them have hot starts, have slow starts. But it would just keep that feel good feeling and that vibe. Keep it going. That it seems that is around the team in person and throughout the fan base and such.
And so, Dan, this will be my last question because we kind of covered the penalty kill a little bit. So, but Lindy Ruff is coming into year 2. He's a veteran coach. He's got a very interesting system. He's got one that's a little bit different than kind of what we're seeing from the NHL as a whole. It's very fast. It's it is the fast attacking that we've been talking about for years. But he definitely brings that kind of mentality, fast breakaways, get on people, force them to make mistakes, things like that. We're now in year 2 of that system. We tried to force it into ignition last year with a short training camp. Now we have a full training camp, a full preseason to take care of it. What are you expecting from the Lindy Ruff experience in year 2?
I think it's just going to continue to build off of what they did last year. I was one of those people. I was pretty excited when it was announced that he was the coach, and I know that wasn't the overwhelming majority of feeling of people. But I've watched this game for a long time, and he's been a good coach for a long time, over eras. I remember him in Buffalo for, it seems like forever. I kind of remember him with Florida as well, when he was on their staff, and most recently with Dallas. I mean, I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. Like, I didn't know who Jamie Benn was until Lindy Ruff got there. And I feel like he also helped Tyler Seguin take his game to the next level. And what if he could do that same thing with a guy like a Jack Hughes or a Dawson Mercer, who's maybe a little bit more comparable to as far as what I've seen, and obviously super small sample size. I'll be the first to tell you I didn't know much about him coming out of the draft and those kind of things. That's not my specialty. I leave that to the guys that know what they're talking about. But I've seen maybe a little bit of that comparison of Mercer's past kind of being that of a Tyler Seguin type player. And geez, man, I'll sign up for that 10 days a week if that was the case. But I'm excited to see, and I think Fitzgerald is on the same page with Ruff, and maybe he's gotten him the talent and the players to do what he wants to do. And to me, it's not a small thing that Dougie Hamilton chose to be here. He knew who the coach was, the type of style they were going to play, and all that. And he chose to be here because he looks at the makeup of what they've done in the last little while here. You could call it a purge, you could call it whatever you want, reboot, rebuild. But they've definitely turned the page a little bit here from that Ray Shero era. And this is Tommy Fitz's team, and it's Nico's, it's Jack's, it's Lindy's. But he's a player's coach, I think, and he's going to help these guys be the best they can in a freewheeling, fast, attacking, and supportive kind of manner.
Yeah, no, I think that it's going to be a fun season. I think it's a lot of interesting parts. I think it's a lot of fun parts. That's the one thing. I think it's going to be a fun team. And that's something that we just seems like we haven't had exactly over the past couple seasons. But Dan, before I let you go, you got a piece out on pucksandpitchforks.com. So promote the piece. Tell us what you wrote about.
I do. Went up this morning. It's just basically, I was obviously as we talked about, I was at the 2 preseason games. So just a couple of things that I saw and noticed, vibes that I got. You got a little bit of coach speak, and I love, I never think I know more than anybody, right? But you think you know a little bit, and then when you talk to or talk with coaches and you listen to them talk, I always feel like I learned something. And I've been, feel like every time I've listened to Lindy Ruff talk in his New Jersey Devils tenure, which I've obviously paid more attention to him now than in his previous stops. But I feel like I've learned something, and it might be a minor detail, it might be something really small. But it's been interesting having him around. One of the more, I'll put him in the top of the food chain of coaches that I've covered. Some were great, some were not. We could talk about that on another show, maybe. But as for the rest of the piece, just highlighting a couple of things around Dougie Hamilton and some of the things that we saw in preseason, and that there should be, as we've talked about, there should be hope for the fans out there. There should be. It showed a little bit of potential, and it showed some progress, I think, from what they've been and what they can become. And now they just have to keep walking the path. And again, obviously, you have to have things break away, right? Sometimes players on other teams get hurt. Not that we ever want to see that, but that affects games, right? That affects outcomes. That affects standings. Sometimes guys just naturally mature and they become better players, smarter players. So I'm really, really excited and interested to see how this plays out. I'm even more excited, I think, that I'm going to be watching it play out as a part of the Pucks and Pitchforks family. I think we have I think we have a couple of cool things that we've been talking about that we want to try and tackle this upcoming season. hopefully we can get to it and provide some great content and have a fun, exciting season.
Yeah, we got some exciting things with Dan Rice coming up. Just talking about some of the pieces that he's got coming out soon gets me excited, gets me feeling all fuzzy inside, Sam. I'm really excited about this season. Dan Rice, Pucks and Pitchforks contributor, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have you on, obviously, again and again and again, and we're excited for the season. Let's go.
Thanks again, guys. And as always said, my line is always open for you. So anytime you call me, I'm ready to come on. Have a great night.
Thanks, Dan. That is Dan Rice, always invited to Taj Lounge 973 for dinner or lunch before he goes in through that media door and does his job.
Yeah, if he's not feeling those chicken fingers that the media is, that if they're serving chicken fingers again at the media door.
Hey, they serve catfish. They serve catfish at Taj Lounge 973.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they serve catfish at the media thing. I was like, I don't know if I'm eating catfish.
No. I wouldn't eat that.
Over the years.
I would only eat catfish at Taj Lounge 973.
But Sam, it was funny. When I was at West Virginia University, and I got to do this quick because we got Will coming on soon. But when I was at West Virginia University, they had an affinity for bringing in Papa John's pizza. And that was the only time I've ever eaten Papa John's pizza. Except for once in elementary school, I remember because of the garlic sauce. Everybody was all obsessed with the garlic sauce. And everybody smelled terrible that day because everybody just poured a bunch of garlic sauce on their pizza. But then at West Virginia University, they got like 20 pies of Papa John's pizza for the media people. And then the day they brought in, I think it was Qdoba. Oh, it was a glorious day, Sam. We got Qdoba. But no, it's the media food. I covered a couple Dolphins games. I've covered a Bucks game. I covered, some Panthers stuff. I covered some other things over the years, just some college stuff. Sometimes you just gotta take a leap of faith. One time it was corn dogs. That was an interesting day. Media food is just such an interesting phenomenon.
I'll tell you the most disgusting thing that I did in college in terms of eating. Being a poor college kid, and we got a couple minutes before we get Will Scouch on top of the hour. There was this every Wednesday night at this Exxon station was chili dog night. I think it was 79 cents chili dog night. Basically, all it was a hot dog and a big salad bar, and you just load it up for 89 cents. So what I would do is get one and pile it on the plate, and that was my dinner. They had lettuce, they had beans,
chili hummus.
They had tons of pickles, whatever you could put on a chili dog, cheese. It would stack up to here, and I with no shame, I would go to the cashier and pay with coins that I can find in my car. And that was my dinner. I'm still alive to talk about it.
We did that at the 7-Eleven when I was a kid. Poor Toms River, New Jersey kid going across we crossed 37, go to the 7-Eleven, and like if you know the 7-Eleven, you buy like a $2 hot dog or a $1 hot dog, whichever one you get. And the one side, you put the hot dog in, you put ketchup on the hot dog. On the other side, you just fill it to the top, the cardboard to the top with chili, and then you got yourself a meal. Look at that.
Yeah. Right. Just one last thing before I get Will, but just there was in college too. There was a place called Old Country Buffet.
Oh, I went to Old Country Buffet.
Yeah, I think senior. I think I went on senior day or something. They had like once a week senior day, like Tuesday night and all that. But you're hungry. You didn't eat all day. I think it was like $9.95 or something like that. But that was the one day I went to Spencer's and I got this T-shirt. I think just about a year ago I threw away this T-shirt. It was an old T-shirt, And I walked into the buffet, and it says, "Ask me how to lose weight." In the front, and on the back, it says, "Stop eating, you big fat pig." And I wore that, and I offended a couple seniors, and I'm still feeling bad about that. Yeah. Anyway, let me get Will Scouch on. Trying to eat some time.
Yeah, I'll eat the time. We're gonna eat everything. Man, we are 2 hours in. I appreciate all the people on the Facebook page who have stuck around for the entire time. You guys are the real MVPs. Love you guys. And honestly, you guys have supported us really well this offseason. Between me and Sam on the podcast and me and the crew on pucksandpitchforks.com, I can't thank you enough. It's been probably the most fun I've been having doing the blog, just talking to people. Everybody seems to be super pleasant. We seem to be in a better place as far as the world goes, and I think that's helping with just our attitude towards everybody. And it's made it a much more pleasant place to do the podcast, a much more pleasant place to do the blog. So thanks, guys. I've been doing a lot of work for the blog. Obviously, I always do a lot of stuff for Pucks and Pitchforks. We have probably about a dozen articles this week that you can go check out. Everything is covered. I could go over it all, but everything is being covered. There's going to be another piece out tomorrow I told you about. There's going to be another piece out after that on Friday. That is going to be the team piece. That one's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot to read, but if you need to kill some time, this is the piece to do it. Big predictions about the Metropolitan Division. Big predictions about the Devils. Bold predictions about the Devils. Charlie says that he's excited about Charlie Borges Jr. Says he's excited about his prediction coming out. The Rangers are collapsing, according to Steve Tardis. Love to see it. 3-0 Capitals. We don't usually like to root for the Capitals, but we love to root for a Rangers collapse. So, sounds like Sam is working on something. So we're working on getting Will on. Will Scouch. He's if you remember from the offseason, he came out to talk about the NHL draft. Did a great job. I don't know if I told you guys this, but he came on our podcast at whatever. It was 8:30, I think. I think it was 8:30 to 9. And then immediately he jumped on to his own live stream and did 3 more hours. This man is a machine. So I'm excited to talk to him. He's the guy who's going to tell me about Shakir Mukhamadullin. He's going to tell me exactly what I need to know and exactly how I need to go about this. Sam's back.
I'm back. We're calling Canada. I was calling Canada before.
See that.
I think I hit the wrong button before, and I think I was talking to somebody else. Good thing I didn't patch them in.
You know what? Let's talk to some randos. Might as well. Make it 7 guests, Sam.
Yeah. Anyway, on the phone line right now, we have Will Scouch, founder of Scouching. You can find him on Twitter at Scouching. Will, you're on with Sam and Nick. You are Will Scouch, are you?
Yes, I am. Last I checked, yeah.
Okay.
We did it.
That's good.
We did it, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
It's so great to have you on. We've been going for 2 hours, so if we sound a little loopy, I'm going to need you to just ignore that part of the podcast and kind of read between the lines for us. I've
been there.
So
it's okay.
Yeah, I was saying that you're a machine. You'll go on and do these live streams, and you'll answer 700 people for 3 hours. I don't know how you do it. I've been here talking to 4 people so far. Maybe I'm just not used to this. But Will,
it takes time.
It takes some getting used to. But I do want to talk. I mean, you're one of the foremost experts of prospects just in general. You follow these guys through the draft, then they get drafted, and then they have to develop, and that's always an interesting perspective. So I kind of wanted to look at just how the Devils have done so far. And obviously I want to talk about Dawson Mercer because he made the NHL team. And that's obviously a big deal. Why do you think that he made it before Alex Holtz is the first question I want to ask you.
That's a very good question. I think what happened when I watched Dawson Mercer before he was drafted, I definitely saw the offensive talent that he brings, and with him, the big thing with me was sort of inconsistency. Just some of the time, he would be much, much more effective than others. But if you bet on him at his best, you could end up with something really interesting. With Alexander Holt, he's very much a north-south player, very much a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy. And I think there is a bit of an adjustment for players like that to come over from big ice in Europe. Alexander Holtz didn't have the most phenomenal AHL time last year, whereas Dawson Mercer has been kind of raised to play that sort of North American style, and he is responsible enough at both ends where personally I'd feel pretty okay putting him out on a third line in the NHL or something, whereas with Alexander Holtz, I'd rather have him playing big minutes if I can. And I mean, again, it's still very early in the year. Alexander Holtz could very easily be a member of the Devils by December. But it's just, I think, about bringing him along so that he's comfortable on North American ice first, whereas with Dawson Mercer, he's kind of much more of a plug-and-play player for an NHL system based on what I've seen.
Yeah, and I guess the Devils had a hole, and they needed it plugged, and I guess Dawson Mercer is there to do it. So let me ask you this. I've seen a lot of inconsistent analysis about how the AHL is as a developmental league as a whole. The Devils are putting a very important asset in the AHL right now, Utica Devils. What is your assessment? How do you feel like the AHL is as a developmental league?
It's hard to say. I mean, it really, really depends on what team we're talking about. You know, I live in the greater Toronto area. If the Toronto Maple Leafs send a player to the Toronto Marlies, I think there's an implicit understanding that development will be handled pretty well. But, I mean, we're looking at the New York Rangers, for example, and, you know, the Leah Sanderson thing didn't work out. And Vitaly Kravtsov, another high-profile European, didn't work out. And at some point, there starts to become a pattern, both positive and negative, for various AHL teams. Since Utica is a brand new affiliate team for New Jersey, they're not a new team, but they're a new affiliate for them now. It'll be very interesting to see how it works. I mean, I look at Alexander Holt and, you know, see him as a player where I'm going, all right, like you can put him in a position to succeed at the AHL level. And I think it very much depends on the player and exactly how you plan on developing the player rather than, you know, being able to say, is the AHL good for development or not? It certainly can be, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. And it'll be interesting to see how it happens for New Jersey, considering there's a new affiliate agreement in place. But with a guy like Alex Holtz, I'm not super concerned, especially because there are areas of his game where, you know, if it meant only playing him on a power play in the NHL as a guy on the wing that can just rip shots into the net all year, and that was a thing he could do, then he could have an NHL role right now. But there is more to the game, and I think there's more that the Devils are looking for, and giving him some more ice time and getting him familiar with this style of play, I think, is a logical next step. And I guess we'll just have to see how it works. The Devils seem to be heading in the right direction overall. So hopefully that continues down to their AHL program.
Yeah, and you love to see that. That's something that you hope it's kind of like same thing. I feel like the same thing happened in Toronto, where the Marlies started to get decent, and then when the NHL team got good, the Marlies started to get good. So it was something you definitely like to see. But the Devils don't just have prospects here. You know, their prospects spread across the world, and the one that we can't stop talking about, our live stream comment section is talking about him and 3 different platforms. People love to talk about Shakir Mukhamadullin, the Russian big defenseman that they surprisingly took in the first round of 2020. What is your expectations here? He scored again yesterday. I didn't expect him to be a scorer in the KHL. I don't know what to make of this kid.
Yeah, he is a weird one. When he was draft eligible, I thought he might be a mid-round flyer that you take, a guy that you work on to build. I mean, he's got size and he's got pretty good range. And NHL teams seem to really value defensemen that have that, where they're relatively solid in terms of height, but you know they might be wiry. Like I'm looking at Shakir Mukhamadullin. He's 6'2" and 170 pounds, and that's a pretty wiry young guy. But he has range, and his mobility is interesting, I would say. I never thought that he was a guy that I would take in the first round. I just watched Hendrik Lapierre score his first NHL goal, and I really thought that that was the easy pick for the Devils at 20. And to come out with Alexander Holtz, Dawson Mercer, and Hendrik Lapierre in the first round would have been pretty interesting. But Shakir Mukhamadullin, he's scoring a lot of his points this year on the power play. The same thing was true last year with Salavat Yulayev. I don't really know how much of an offensive player he'll be in the NHL. But again, he might be one of these, interesting 200-foot defensemen that can chip in on his own end. He can get a little bit physical, but, pivoting and managing guys that are pressuring him in close quarters is a pretty big question mark for me still. I did watch a little bit of tape of him from this year before this little chat we're having. He was always going to be a bit of a project. And, again, I didn't really have him ranked super high. I thought maybe you draft him and see what happens in a couple of years when he plays 20 minutes a night in the KHL. And, I don't see a real dynamic offensive guy. But based on the sort of skating ability that I've seen out of him at times and just his positional awareness when he's playing well, there could be something there. But I've never been extraordinarily supportive of that draft pick.
Yeah, it still seems weird, but then honestly, there's a lot of people from that round that are making it into the NHL already. So it's one of those times will tell, I guess. But it's not as important of a pick anymore because of who the Devils picked the next season, and that is Luke Hughes, who's now a Michigan Wolverine. The team seems like it's stacked to the gills with talent. I am assuming they're at least the top 2 favorite to win the Frozen Four tournament next year. What are you looking? What should Devils fans look for when they're turning into a Wolverines game when they want to get a little glimpse of Luke Hughes?
Luke Hughes is one of those defensemen who makes plays you don't see very often. The huge advantage that I saw in Luke Hughes last year was that he is basically a year younger than everyone else that was eligible that went in the top 10 last year. He is one of the youngest players in the draft last year, and considering the offensive talent that he brought last year that I saw many, many times, I absolutely see how Luke Hughes is a real high potential offensive defenseman in the NHL. The Devils have drafted a lot of guys that I think lean a little bit more defensively. So guys like Daniil Mizyul, I'm looking at other ones, Ethan Edwards, Kevin Ball, Nikita Okhotiuk, Michael Vukojevic. All of these guys are more defensive leaning more than anything, some more heavily than others. But Luke Hughes is a player who I think needs to work on his defensive game, but he's also one of these players where I think the offense makes up for that lack of defense. And if that defensive floor kind of raises a little bit, which it can, I've seen him much more capable defensively or at times. It's just there was many occasions where I saw, the talent that he needs to be better defensively, but he'd use it offensively. So things like closing out gaps defensively, lateral movement to close out those gaps and push guys towards the board. He wasn't really doing a whole lot of that on the defensive side of the puck, but he did have that lateral agility and that lateral mobility when the puck was on his stick and he was looking for an offensive play. So it's like a mental tweak, I think, that might need to happen for him. But the thing to keep an eye on for him with Michigan is just the ability to just spot a bit of a seam in the offensive zone when the puck hits his stick, stepping into that seam and making a play of some kind. He's aggressive. He is confident, almost to a fault. And I think he's a bit of a work in progress, but considering how young he is and the raw talent that's there, I think that at the very least, one season in Michigan will do him pretty well. And if he needs another year, I don't think it's time to panic. I don't think there's anything wrong with being patient with your prospect, but I've been a big fan of Luke Hughes. I've been a big believer in him. And I think the only limit is really sort of him sort of maturing as a player, playing at 200 feet of the ice, maturing as a person, and just sort of settling into a role while still having that offensive confidence. Because it is, in my opinion, it's one of those special things that you don't see a whole lot, especially in defensemen who are very close to being first-time eligible for the 2022 draft. I mean, he was a matter of days away from being a defense prospect in this year's draft. So I think he's a great pickup, and I think he'll be an anchor on the top pair or top two pairs in New Jersey for a while.
I mean, I'd love that. I'd love if Luke Hughes is one of the top two pairs for a while. And the Devils obviously have a lot of interesting pieces already there. We're talking about it with Ty Smith, and Dougie Hamilton's obviously there for the next 7 years. So they're in a pretty good situation. Just real quick, do you think that, this is kind of off the board a little bit, but do you think it matters at all that he's not like a top guy at Michigan? Like they already have Owen Power and a couple other really good defensemen there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the point is that he's surrounded by really high-end talent. He's not being given the keys to the Ferrari at some other NCAA program and being told that you're the top pair guy right away, so have fun, good luck. It's more of a, he has better line mates to work off of. He's not being dependent on 20 minutes a night to play both offensively and defensively. He is in an interesting spot. I mean, obviously it would be great if he could play top pair minutes in the NCAA right off the bat, but I believe, again, he's one of the youngest players in the entire NCAA in the entire country. So I'm not super concerned about it. I imagine that, it's not a panic mode thing if he goes back for another year after this just to play those top pair minutes and get that extra seasoning and maybe makes an NHL appearance at the end of next season, especially if a guy like Owen Power leaves after this year. And I think that wouldn't be too insane of a suggestion for Luke Hughes, but I do think that there's enough raw talent that after a year, even if it's as a second pair guy with Michigan, that he could be a guy that's ready to leave college and play in the NHL right away. So I'm not super concerned about it, mostly because he's surrounded by just a tremendous amount of talent, which to me is a good thing, especially for a guy who literally just turned 18.
Yeah, that's fair. That's all very fair. I'm not a patient man though, Will, but that's all very fair. So just kind of looking at the rest of the prospect pool, there's just a lot. I mean, you named like 6 defensemen that are just like, it's hard to keep up with all of them. But is there somebody that you're looking at? Is there somebody that caught your eye either during your draft research or like since then that you think could make a jump this year?
In terms of a big jump, I mean, I have always been a really, really big fan of Arseny Gritsiuk, who plays in the KHL for Omsk, and he's a guy who I caught in 2019, like back when I first started making YouTube content. And he was one of the first guys where I thought, maybe this is a guy that I kind of like that I'm not hearing a whole lot about, so I figure I'll keep an eye on him for a while. Put together one of my first videos on him just to see what was going on there. And I really liked his progression. It's a little bit slow, but that's perfectly okay. He's playing more and more minutes every single year, playing on a pretty good team in the KHL. He's producing pretty well as well for a guy his age. He's a guy who I think kind of flies under the radar. I don't have huge expectations for him, but he's the one that I'll jump on first. And the other one that I kind of am curious about in a bit of an opposite direction is Benjamin Baumgartner, who was drafted last year, drafted, I believe, in the 6th round by New Jersey. He's a guy who I really, really liked playing in the Swiss Pro League. But he seems to be struggling with a new team this year in Lausanne. Only has 1 point through 11 games, and I've watched a bit of tape of him, and he just doesn't quite look like the same player I remember. But I still have faith. I think there's a lot of talent there. He's cracked the Austrian national team already this season, playing in some Olympic game qualifiers and internationally. So those two guys are guys that I have my eye on. I think that there's interesting potential there, but I definitely lean a bit more into the Arseny Gritsiuk world because of just the sort of slippery skill that he brings and the offensive flair that I think there's still a bit of a lack of in the Devils developmental system, at least with guys outside the NHL right now.
Well, Scouch, coming on, bringing so much knowledge. I really appreciate you coming on. Man, I got to do something with all this information. Will,
anytime.
what do you got? What are you doing for Scouching? Are you doing on anything for the regular season? Do you got anything to promote going on?
Yeah, so over at McKean's Hockey, I run the video analysis department with Greg Reback and Sam McGilligan, so you can go follow those two guys on Twitter. And we put together just some video analysis pieces looking at various parts of the game and various players around the world. We're starting to ramp up into that a little bit more as time goes on. I have weekly live streams every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where I take questions, as you said, from 700 people for 3 hours. And that's always something that I like to do. Always tracking data, which I present during those live streams as well. That's mostly what takes up my free time these days. And then starting around the beginning of next year, we'll be putting out some videos on YouTube profiling some players for 2022.
It sounds like we're going to have to get you on here to profile some of them players. So, Will, expect me back in your DMs in January. But for now, thank you so much for coming on. This was great. I really appreciate you coming on.
Anytime. Thank you very much.
That is Will Scouch, founder of Scouching. You can find him on Twitter at Scouching. He's a pretty popular guy. I mean, some of the comments like, Will is the best, Getty27 says on YouTube live chat.
Meanwhile, over on Facebook, we got New York Rangers suck. So we see how the comment section's going on Facebook versus YouTube. YouTube still more positive than Facebook.
Well, you know what? There was a period of time that YouTube absolutely hated me. Remember those days? You know what? It's like we're on so many social media platforms. You know what that reminds me of? Bar hopping. Like if you go to the Devils game, Edison plays, there's several bars. One in particular I like is Taj Lounge 973. Then you get Taj Lounge 973 as YouTube Live. And next door Reds is Facebook Live. And it's a different crowd, different atmosphere, but all the same fun. The Let's Go Devils podcast. That's how I liken it too. With all the social media, pages that we are on. Our next guest, you betcha we're going to have him on. You like the pun there?
Yeah. It was terrible, but it was fun.
I spelled his Twitter handle wrong on Twitter before. I felt bad, so I had to retweet and tag him.
Oh, yeah. You got to tag the right people, Sam. You got to tag the right people. And he's another one. He's the second guy tonight who's got a new job. He's moving up in the world, working for the Score as the betting writer.
Woo!
So we're going to talk a little betting. Betting, a lot of our listeners are from New Jersey. A lot of them dabble in a little bit of a sports betting gambling situation and want to know how they can get an edge. So I wanted to bring on somebody who can help them get an edge, Sam. But we got a couple minutes, right? Is that at 9:30? Is that what I'm looking at?
I think so. I'm going through. I just get bombarded with emails, and I'm trying to find your email, your schedule. I should start printing this stuff out in the future. Now that I got my printer back, that's another story.
Oh, you got a printer.
Oh, it's actually 9:20. We're supposed to get them at 9:20. It says 9:20.
Oh,
crap. All right.
Okay, so let's
stand by.
That's my fault. I went a little over on Will. My bad, Matt. Matt Russell from The Score is coming on next. We're a little late on him because we went a little long on Will, and I got my schedule a little off. So that's my fault. I'll take the blame there. But Matt's a great guy. We had him on, I think it was in May. I think it was right before the playoffs. We had him on. Talk about where to put your bets for the playoffs. And like I said, since then he's gotten a new job. So I'm excited to talk to him about the new job, the new gig, who he likes, how he likes the Devils over-under number, how he likes some of the other bets. So if you like to make money, if you like to make a little bit of the green, add some things to your wallet, you absolutely have to stick around and listen to Matt Russell. And then after Matt Russell, we got Vinnie Parise coming on. So the podcast isn't close to over, folks. We have 30 minutes minimum left. We're going way through 10 o'clock. There's no limit here. We're going to do the 3 hours of podcasting here. We're very excited. Matt Russell's somebody he's been doing a lot of work. And you know what? Honestly, if you bet on football, if you bet on anything, he's the guy to go to. He's the head betting. I don't know if he's a head betting writer, but he's an overall betting writer at The Score. So he's somebody you definitely should check out when you're doing anything. So Sam's going to get him right now. Sam, you're back.
I'm back, and I have a question for you.
What? Well, oh, no.
If you were a betting man, do you think I had the right number for our next guest, Matt Russell, the betting
do you have the
writer
wrong number?
for the Score?
Do you have the wrong number?
Well, if you were a betting man, would you bet that I have him on, or no?
No, right now, absolutely not.
You don't know how to gamble. On the podcast, his name is Matt Russell, betting writer of the Score. You can find him on Twitter at MRussAuthentic. Matt, you're on. How are you, my friend?
Gentlemen, I'm fantastic. We're getting the name spelled wrong. We're getting the time a little off here. It was an underdog that he actually had the phone number correct. So I can understand that you would go with the favorite in that situation there. But no, he found me. Just sitting here waiting on you guys. And listen, I'm following Will, who is apparently just an absolute favorite. Speaking of favorites, on the YouTube channel and whatnot. Meanwhile, I spend my days getting told what an idiot I am because I'm recommending bets against everybody's favorite team, apparently, because I hate them all. So I hate everybody's team. I'm an idiot. Will is the golden god, and I got to follow that. So that's standard.
So here's the thing: is that you spend your time talking about professional teams, and obviously you sit here and you hate all 32 NHL teams. You hate all 30 baseball teams, all 32 NFL teams. You just have a lot of hate in your heart, but he gets to just feel light around young players who aren't tied to a team yet. He gets to talk about draft prospects. So it's honestly not fair.
No, it isn't, because he gets to just say how great all these kids are, right? And we're never going to go back and find the clip about when he said, like, Larry Fitzwanky wasn't a great, didn't end up being a great hockey player. We're not going to throw that back in his face.
Matt, I got an idea.
It's like, oh, you got a bet wrong once. And I'm like, yeah, happens a lot.
Matt, I got an idea. We'll have a little fun with this. I'll set up a parody account of the anti-Will Scouch called @Grouching, and then we can just make fun of him like he's the guy that everybody hates, right?
Yeah, we'll just to make you feel better, Matt. We're gonna go into all this length.
Well, listen, I think like 60% of the guys that he mentioned were completely made up, right? Like there's no confirming that those really exist. Those people actually are real. There's no defining thing that I could, I can't figure out who he's talking about half the time. But people are loving him, and that's and he's in a great spot. So good for him. But let's talk some sports betting here, gentlemen. How fired up are we for this season to start?
Yeah, and everybody's second favorite team is the team that they have money on. Sometimes it's your favorite team. But just kind of jumping into the numbers, there's so much happening with the NHL right now. There's a little bit of uncertainty with some teams like the Penguins, the Blackhawks. There's a lot of teams that are kind of up in the air, which maybe translates to, we call it Vegas, but I guess Jersey is making odds. It translates to the odds. So when you're looking right now, Matt, you're looking at just the betting landscape of hockey. Are you putting more of your effort into futures, or are you putting more of your effort into, daily games and trying to find where the odds are off on these dailies?
Yeah, you know what? I don't do necessarily a ton of futures betting. I will sort of pick my spots. Early in the season, I don't even necessarily do a ton of game betting. Basically, anything that I have will be what I sort of call off-market betting, right? So you have at the start of the season the total points market, right? You got your Devils, 88, 89 and a half. Like, are they going over? Are they going under? And so what that does is that creates a market that people obviously can bet into for 2 weeks before the season starts. And in theory, if there's a mistake on there, it's going to get pounded into shape. And so you can take those numbers and you can turn those into money lines for any combination of a matchup for the season. And so you can then compare that with what the actual line is. And if the line is off, then you can just make that bet based on the fact that that line is off from what we all sort of agreed upon before the season started.
with regards to total points. So for me, I'm sort of picking my thoughts from that standpoint while we build up numbers for these teams, because we can kind of guess off of last season, but enough teams, like the Devils, for example, make enough changes that there should be some discernible difference between this team and last year's team. In the case of the Devils, obviously, I think there's some hope, right? A little more hope than normal. And with some other teams, like say the Stanley Cup champions, right? They've had to, lose a few players here, and maybe it's obviously they're riding high off 2 Stanley Cups, but maybe it's time for a step back, right? And we can sort of guess that. But until we get these numbers from the early part of the season here to try to evaluate, okay, who's good, who's overrated, who's underrated, it's really just an info collection process for me right now, beyond just kind of looking at different markets. Now, you mentioned sort of all of the kind of craziness, and it's, like Nathan McKinnon, right? He's not playing to start the season, and, their point spread their money line was built, a couple of weeks ago, because it's, opening night or one of the first 2 opening nights. And then it gets adjusted for Nathan McKinnon not being in the lineup. And that's the stuff that's kind of interesting to me on how much we're adjusting teams based on players not being in the lineup. So a guy like Nathan McKinnon, right? Like, how much does he affect the money line? And, is it too much? So they make a 12% change in the money line, right? From a win probability standpoint. So basically the market sets the line, Nathan McKinnon's in, and then now he's out, and they go, okay, well, there's 12% less of a chance of the Avalanche winning the game tonight. Is that too high? Is that too low, right? Like, is Nathan McKinnon that, much more important, right? Like, so these are the things that are kind of interesting going forward that we can kind of make note, right? So the market thinks 12% is fair right now. So, maybe 15, for the next game is probably too high, or maybe that's an over-adjustment, obviously depending on what happens with the game set. We saw, right, the Lightning go and lose to the Penguins without Crosby and Malkin. Well, both of those guys combined were good for about an 8% win probability decrease for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Didn't end up working out because they won the game, right? But just going into it, that was the value that those guys were given. So that's the stuff that's really interesting to me right now in the betting market.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely super interesting to see how the odds makers value one player against another, and kind of taking one out of the lineup, how much that changes the line. And like, obviously in football, it's a little different because like a quarterback obviously has a much higher, impact on the game than one player in hockey, unless it's the goalie, obviously. But it's just funny how you see those lines move. You mentioned the Devils line.
Yeah.
I believe. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say a lot of the times the goalie there's an overreaction to a goaltender, right? Because listen, if McKinnon's out, that drives obviously 5-on-5 play, and it drives the power play. And I'll use Connor McDavid as probably the pinnacle, right, as the best player in the league. The Oilers without McDavid, like what percentage would you assign him to their success, right? And whereas a goaltender, it's like, it's still a professional goaltender. It's, you're not necessarily losing. There's very few teams that if the starter goes out, you'd prefer him to be in there, but he's not that much better than the backup goaltender, right? A lot of these guys are sort of starter and backup in kind of name only, and all you need to do is wait a few months, and those roles might change, right? There's plenty of teams where that sort of shifts back and forth. Again, Devils might be one of those teams as well. You never know. Like sometimes I think a lot of people overreact to, this goaltender starting on this day, because it's kind of like the NBA where you don't necessarily know who's playing in the NBA when you go to make a bet in the morning. And in the NHL, the goaltender, right? You don't necessarily know for sure if that goaltender's starting. And when you find out it's a backup, you kind of get bummed out a lot of the time. But a lot of the time, it kind of doesn't matter in one game. Now, you obviously don't want your starting goaltender out for, 20, 30 games at a time, because that sort of piles up, right? We see a lot of backup goaltenders who just can't handle the load. But when a guy is playing once a week, right, like that's not a bad deal for that backup goaltender. He's probably more focused in a lot of cases, and maybe feeling a little bit more rested and a little bit better than a starting goaltender might be on his 5th game in a row, right? So it might be a good thing that the backup goaltender is coming in. So we're just sort of something that's worth mentioning, because I know a lot of people kind of freak out when the backup goalie gets put in the game 3 hours before game time, or at least announced that he's going to be starting the game 3 hours before the game.
It's interesting to go on the backup goalies, and that's definitely an interesting strategy. But I bet you you're right. I bet you it's a money making strategy because those lines probably overreact to that. So I want to look at the Devils line. You mentioned it. I think one place I saw was 88.5. I saw 89. Depending on where you bet. What do you think of that line? What do you think of that over under?
Yeah, it's funny, right? So obviously, I would say probably the Devils are, top 5, top 10 in sort of teams that have made changes, right? Obviously, the Dougie Hamilton move, for example, right, is a really big move. That's arguably the biggest move of the offseason when it comes to, quote unquote, star players or sort of, win probability driving players. A guy that matters if he happened to miss a game or two, right, to the point spread. Yeah. Maybe, not necessarily like a 5% or a 10%, but a 1 or 2% type of thing. And so because of that and that addition, the Devils are getting a lot of credit in the market for just being improved from last year. Now, there's a bunch of analytical reasons why that's the case as well. So to say it's, fair, it doesn't put them, if they landed exactly on 89.5, which obviously they cannot do, but if they landed on 89 or 90, that's still not good enough for a playoff spot in the NHL. So if I said to you like, well, no, that's way too high, that's probably not all that fair to say, because I think the Devils could be in the mix for a playoff spot. Right? Like, I don't know that it's necessarily, a lock by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a team that, if a couple of things go right, and listen, it's the NHL, so we're talking about 4-on-4 overtime and shootouts and stuff like that can get you a few extra points if a couple of pucks bounce the right way. So, listen, if it was an unfair line, it would be bet down or bet up, in a significant way, right? We would see a 2 or a 3 point line movement. So, maybe at 88.5, that is a line movement off of 89.5, which tells me that people have bet that down. Like last year, if we're just using last year's numbers, then yeah, it's a little too high, right? But the whole point of Dougie Hamilton and forking, back in the Brinks truck up for him is to improve. And if he's a guy from an analytics standpoint, he certainly is. If he's a guy who can be a difference maker, then yeah, like that's probably fair that he's going to increase their sort of their rating or their average point total, expectancy up to where it is now, right? And it's the sneaky thing because they're playing. I'm really excited about their first game of the season against the Blackhawks, right? Because they are playing the other team that was making big moves in the off season of the sort of teams that didn't make the playoffs, right? So that game is really, really interesting. And not necessarily the result, because, maybe it's a 3-2 game where, it goes off somebody, puck goes off somebody's shin or something like that. But I'll be interested to see what the metrics behind it, are sort of reflecting from that game, right? Did the Devils outplay the Blackhawks? Did the Blackhawks outplay the Devils? Right? I think right off the bat, those are probably two teams that I'm looking for kind of extreme outcomes with, right? Like we don't know. Both teams might be really, really good, right? Like it would be somewhat surprising given their last season. But listen, it's a new season, new personnel, et cetera, et cetera. Or it could go really badly for both teams, right? There's kind of a really big, a wide range of results here possibly for both the Devils and the Blackhawks. And lo and behold, right, they play each other early on in the season, and we get to at least, have our first look at both of those teams on the same ice. And so that's the type of stuff, when I'm talking about checking stuff out and early on in the season, like those two teams, I've got that, I would have those two teams circled for teams that I want to see early on. Just so happens I don't have to waste my time with 2 games. I get it all in one game.
So I'm curious what, you're going to be watching these teams and I think the numbers are going to be a little off if they're good. And I think that, the odds makers are going to need to see it. So I think if the Devils are indeed good, the goaltending steps up. Dougie Hamilton is somebody that, you can get good value there. But what's something you're going to need to see in these first couple games that's going to make you want to put your money on the Devils?
Yeah. So here's the thing, and I think we talked about this. I think it was on last May, and we sort of did a season breakdown, if you will, about the Devils and sort of the future of, right? And we talked about the idea of, like, they're still in the talent collection phase of a rebuild, right? And obviously they've gone out and they're trying to speed that up a little bit here by getting the veteran Dougie Hamilton. and listen, you guys know this probably as well as anybody, right? But for me, I'm looking for the power play because the team last year was okay 5-on-5 for a team that, wasn't that close to making the playoffs. 5-on-5, their core metrics, expected goals for, high danger chances created, were right around 49%, which, still below 50. There's only 2 teams on the ice, right? So you want to at least be at 50%. But not, some catastrophe by any stretch of the imagination. So you know that they can play 5-on-5 to sort of a league average type team. But as you guys know, I'm sure, the power play was horrendous last year, right? And so, I've got the Rangers game on right now, and so I'm going to compare the Devils a little bit to the team across the river. And last year, we've got a bad Devils power play, but they're getting 155 power plays last year. Right? The Rangers got 179. So, okay, the Rangers had more, right? But the Devils had 86% of the power plays that the Rangers had. Okay? Mm-hmm. The Devils, though, only had 59 high-danger chances created on their power play. The Rangers had 126, more than double, right? So while the Rangers had a few more power plays, they had more, they had more than double the high danger chances created on their power play. Now, listen, you might say, okay, well, the Rangers have a little bit more top-end talent, but not enough to have that discrepancy. And when it comes to the power play, I don't know what you guys feel like. I feel like that's a coaching thing, right? Like this is the one chance that a coach has to sort of set his players in the position he wants them to be in and then sort of go from there and let their overall talent kind of shine through. And talent plus chemistry in the power play, right? Like that's how you score goals and how do you score goals? Well, you get those high danger chances. So for me, the key guy this year might be Mark Recchi for the Devils because that's the guy who's running the power play for Lindy Ruff and the Devils. And so, you go, okay, he was a 22-year veteran. He played on, some outstanding teams, Eric Lindros and Mario Lemieux. He probably should know how to run a power play, right? He was running the power play for the Penguins for like 3 years. But that was the power play that had Chris Letang and Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. So you sort of wonder, and you hope this isn't the case. And I hope this isn't the case because, again, I think the Devils are ripe to be a team that we can bet on throughout the season, or at least the early part of the season, as underdogs, getting plus money on money lines against teams that are perceived to be better than them. But if Mark Recchi is just a guy who's kind of had a lot of really high-end talent to work with, whether as a coach or as a player, I don't want to swear on your podcast here, but like Adam Gase got 2 head coaching jobs because he worked with Peyton Manning for a year, right? Like I could stand there, looking like an idiot with a headset on while Peyton Manning was out there running offense for the Denver Broncos. And like, I probably would have gotten a head coaching job there too, right? And so, hopefully this isn't an Adam Gase situation where like he just has really high-end talent. And when he doesn't necessarily have like the literal best player in the league, he doesn't kind of know what to do to sort of manufacture those chances. And so if we get to the start of the season here and a couple of, 2-3 weeks into the season, and it's like, well, listen, maybe even the efficiency isn't great. Maybe it's still running at 14% the way that it was last year. But if the high danger chances are up, that's what I'm looking for because that's eventually going to sort of work its way out from a percentage standpoint, right? Like the percentages are eventually going to be what they are. Everybody kind of gravitates to 20%, but you're not going to gravitate to 20% if you're not getting the chances to score these goals. So that's what I'm looking for from the Devils because I already think they're going to be a decent enough team 5-on-5 again, especially with Dougie Hamilton. And listen, we can talk about the goaltending here, right? And be like, well, the key is goaltending. The key is always goaltending. It's also the most unpredictable thing in the world, right? Like you could tell me that Mackenzie Blackwood was a Vezina candidate this year, and I would shrug my shoulders and be like, yeah, maybe. Or you can tell me that he's out of the league, like Corey Schneider, and I'd be like, yeah, maybe. You know what I mean? Like it's just we never know from year to year. Like it's completely unpredictable from year to year, especially with younger goaltenders who obviously everybody but Vasilevsky basically. I mean, we saw Marc-Andre Fleury win the Vezina last year, and the year before that they were giving away his job, right? And so like we don't know, and so like goaltending really important, duh. But like there's nothing that's going to give us any indication. You know, Devils could start with 3 straight shutouts, but like that doesn't promise you anything for the rest of the season. But from a predictive analytics standpoint, creating high danger chances on the power play is the thing that the Devils were missing last year, and the thing I want for them this year. And so hopefully Dougie Hamilton will sort of bring that to the fold.
And it's funny you bring that up because I literally have that stat from the power play in my article that's coming out in the morning. So just know I didn't steal that from you, but you know, if you need credit, I can send it your way. But before I let you go, Matt, I just want to know what is the favorite bet you've made so far this season, or the preseason, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the thing that I dug into for the score is the Vezina market, because I think that one is sort of the most interesting because, like we just talked about with goaltending, it's kind of just completely chaos. Like I went, you know, when whether it's football or whether it's hockey, awards, you know, I like to try to create a profile. Okay, who are the guys who win this award, right? Like, and how did they get there, right? Because it's all, you know, it's not often the second year guy. It's not often maybe it's often a 30-year-old. Like, is there an age? Is there an experience? Is there a previous season that would lead up to this guy winning MVP or the Hart Trophy or Defensive Player of the Year or this, that, or whatever? And so I did that with the Vezina, and there is no rhyme or reason to anybody winning the Vezina, right? Like, and you look back and you go, okay, these are all really good goaltenders, blah, 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 blah. But, like, they didn't necessarily have good years the year before that. They weren't necessarily all the same age, right? You got Tim Thomas, who was like 107 when he won the Vezina, and you've got other guys who were like 23 when they won the Vezina. So there's kind of no rhyme or reason. But the only thing that really mattered was, guess what? Your team has to be decent, right? Every goaltender, with the exception of Connor Hellebuck in the shortened season 2 years ago, every one of those teams, every one of their goaltenders had teams who were playoff caliber teams, right? Who basically the average point total was 99 points, right? So you kind of have to be a good team to have that goaltender winning. And so I came up with 3 names. So the other element I need is I want guys who play, right? There's a lot of split type situations in the league. And then there's obviously a lot of, the heavy favorites, the Vasilevskis of the world. It's like, okay, it's plus 300. Just that number alone on the chance he gets injured and misses some time, or maybe just has a down year, or maybe the guys in front of him have a down year. And, I don't want to be laying just whatever price here at plus 300. I don't really want to do that for 6, 7, 8 months here. So I want something a little bit juicier, a little bit of a long shot. So I have 3 guys basically that are going to get the time and that are going to have the opportunity. And most importantly, they're going to have the credit if their team does well. And so it starts with Robin Lehner. That's kind of an easy one because the goaltender for the Knights won it last year. Wasn't Lehner, obviously, it was Fleury, but he is, he has that infrastructure in front of him for a pretty good defensive team to make his numbers look really good, and of course their win totals really good. And then the other 2 sort of sleepers are Thatcher Demko for the Vancouver Canucks, who last year, for whatever reason, the Canucks decided, hey, Braden Holtby is a good idea, and they split time between the 2, and it took, everyone other than the Canucks coaching staff and management 5 seconds to realize that Thatcher Demko was much, much better than Holtby. And so he profiles as a guy who could play 60 games this year. And if the Canucks are good and they make the playoffs, who's going to get the credit for that? It's going to be Thatcher Demko, because the Canucks are going to do that. If they do that, they're going to do that with not the best defense, right? They're not going to be, slowing teams down. And so they're going to have to get saved on certain nights by Demko, not unlike how he did against the Golden Knights back in the bubble, back in 2020, right? And then the final one is UC Saros, who, if the season for the Nashville Predators, who if the season was an extra month long last year, he might have ended up leading the league in goals against average and save percentage, because that guy in the last 3 months of the season was lights out. He had an absolutely brutal start to the season, but then he dragged the Predators to the playoffs. Gave the Carolina Hurricanes a run for their lives. And that's a guy who, was not necessarily a household name, so you're getting a pretty good price on him, probably around 30-1, depending on where your book has him listed. But again, that's a guy who, listen, it's the Predators, right? If they do well, it's going to be because of defensive hockey and because they keep the puck out of the net. and those gaudy numbers are going to be reflective in UC Stara. So having those three guys for the Vezina was sort of the most fun that I had as far as kind of digging into that market, because it is such a sketchy market, but there are some different angles that are worth playing.
Matt, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Promote some of the stuff. What are you doing for the Score right now?
Oh, Nick, did I lose you?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Matt?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you now, Nick. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
No, I was just saying, I was thanking you for coming on, and then I wanted you to promote stuff. What are you doing for the Score right now?
I think last time I kind of cut out right at the end there, and I felt like I bailed on you guys. I don't know what's going on. I guess even technology is like, we've had enough of listening to this guy talk. Yeah, I'm at the Score. The Score app, it's on everybody's phone, right? It's the blue with the white S, the yellow line underneath it. It's where you go to check the scores. It also should be where you go for betting content. And you just click over on to news on the bottom, and then bet on the left side at the top. Myself, I'm doing college football, NFL, and NHL this season. And then we have a couple other guys who are outstanding NHL handicappers. They live and breathe this stuff. Alex Moretto and Todd Cordell has just joined us. Those guys are outstanding. So you can trust them to give you their absolute best, because those guys are absolute hockey hardos in the best sense of the word. And at MRUS Authentic, MRUSS Authentic over on Twitter, everything kind of gets funneled through there, including my time with you guys, which I absolutely appreciate. This is a blast. I appreciate you guys not forgetting about me once the season starts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Matt, I really appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us. Sorry, I thought it was 9:30. It was not. We have 6 guests tonight. I shouldn't do this again. I'm bad at schedules, but I appreciate you waiting a couple minutes for us. I appreciate you giving us some other time, and we'll talk to you soon, Matt.
Anytime, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Sam. That was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
That is Matt Russell of the Score. I messed that one up. I muted myself.
I see that. You muted yourself.
Matt is a problem. He's a problem. I don't know. I love the guy, but it just seems like anytime he's on, there's always technical difficulties. Doesn't mean we won't have him on again.
Difficulties every time he's on.
Yeah, but do you know who doesn't have technical difficulties? I deal with Beer Baron, Scotty, Shorts Guy, yourself, always has technical difficulties sometimes. But the one guy that actually follows directions, he's from Pucks and Pitchforks blog. You know him as Vinnie Parise from Chicago. Big Devils fan. Vinnie, welcome to the program.
Sam, thank you so much for having me. You just jinxed me so hard, though. Like, wait till we
really
get to the post-game show and my computer explodes.
You got me in Tampa and Vinny in Chicago trying to cover all these games, Sam, and you're just jinxing us left and right. We're trying to make this work.
I know, and then opening night, for our debut of our game day live, right? The Let's Go Devils game day live. We beaming in Vinnie Parise. It's 6:05 p.m. He's watching all the ruckus, and then we lose him.
That right there is what we call the reverse jinx.
Hopefully.
Well, Vinny, honestly, you're going to see a lot of shenanigans on Friday. We got Shorts Guy on site. We got Beer Baron on site. We got a lot of fans just private messaging us. Oh, we want to see you. It's been 2 years at Taj Lounge 973. And we're going to have I want to say this before we start talking hockey. I actually had a 3-hour sit-down yesterday with Taj Lounge 973 owners. This is what I found out. They're hip-hop moguls. That's what I call them. They're hip-hop moguls. And they told me that they've done 30 years in the entertainment business, 17 years in the restaurant business, and they love New Jersey Devils fans. And Taj Lounge is actually named after their son, Taj, and he's a DJ, and he's on Hot 97 in New York, which is the biggest hip hop station of whatever, and on Sirius XM Shade 45, which we know Scotty's on Liquid Metal. It's starting to all come together, and they're allowing me to put an overhead camera on the second floor to show the crowd outside of Taj filing in, and we're going to have about 5 cameras all over the place and a speaker and monitor outside so we can actually yell at Ranger fans while on live air because everybody in Newark can hear us, and we can legally do all this.
That sounds so exciting and exactly what you would ever want as someone who does something like this. Like, I just want to yell at Rangers fans and talk about the Devils.
From Chicago. From Chicago.
Yeah, from Chicago. They're playing the Blackhawks.
Which is actually
doing double duty on Friday.
Oh, it's been a week, guys. Covering the playoffs and just going through the motions and being sad. And now the Devils play the Hawks, and I'm writing about them for 2 sites. It's going to be a crazy day. I'm excited, though.
I would honestly, Vinny, I've been trying to. It's my wife's birthday this week, so or next week. So we're going to Pittsburgh this weekend. So I'm trying to fit as much in beforehand. So I think I've written about. I'm trying to count. Probably about this month, I've written about 100,000 words. I feel like I'm on Don Lucian level between 2 30-page sliders and a bunch of 5-page and 10-pagers for Pucks and Pitchforks and 4 or 5 other – no, it's just like 7 or 8 other ones for fan-sided. I've been all over the place. Lots of words, Vinny.
And one thing I've learned over the last year and a half since I got promoted within Fansided, you deserve a lot of respect because editing those pieces of other contributors isn't always, a piece of cake.
There are some that take me longer than others.
Especially when the Woo when the Woo submits it and he doesn't even know how to log into his account.
It's like Sam, what is this? Anyway, let's talk New Jersey Devils hockey. We've been loopy. We are about to approach 3 hours live on the podcast.
What a marathon!
And we're going into overtime.
We're going into overtime. Let's avoid the shootout because I hate the shootout. But Vinny, let's talk about the New Jersey Devils. Let's talk about where they made a lot of moves this offseason. They added Dougie Hamilton, Ryan Graves, Tomas Tatar. Actually, let's talk about Tomas Tatar because we haven't talked about Tomas Tatar not once this entire time. So tell me, what do you think of that signing? He's currently on a line with Dawson Mercer. Dawson Mercer is the guy who surprisingly made the team. What are your assessment? What do you think they're going to get from Tomas Tatar?
Yeah, very cool to see Tomas Tatar on a line with Mercer because he gets a veteran that scored lots of goals in the NHL, and that's kind of what you want to see from a young centerman. But Tatar, the signing to me feels like it could go one of 2 ways. It could turn out to be he turns into a ghost halfway through the season and you just wonder what happened to him and why isn't he scoring. Or he could prove to be one of those veteran signings that score 25, 30 goals, and it's like, how did nobody else go for this guy? So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. It's kind of one of the bigger question marks on the team, I would say, but I'm leaning towards kind of predicting that he will have a good year playing with some kids and helping them grow their games and seeing what they can do for him. Sometimes as you progress through your NHL career, you see guys get revived by playing with younger players. And, it'd be nice to see that happen for Tatar because they can use a guy who can score as much as any team in the league. Like, we got people saying Yegor Sharangovich is going to lead the team in goals. So to me, that says like, hey, we got to find some other people to help him in terms of the goal scoring, and I think Tatar can do that.
Yeah, that'll be. I'm excited to see those two together. Were you surprised that Mercer made it?
Not after the way he played in the preseason. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little surprised Holtz didn't, but when they signed VC, I was like, all right, Holtz is going to play in Utica to start. But, yeah, after the way Mercer played and just the way he didn't look out of place at all, like there was no point where he looked out of place. Like there were a couple games where he was their best player. And he was the first New Jersey Devils player to score a second goal in the preseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if he impresses so much in the first 9 games that he sticks around. Kind of like, to a lesser extent, I was going to say Jesper Bratt. He was a 6th-round pick, so I guess that's a little more of a surprise. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can.
I'll even make the argument, Vinny and Nick, that it may actually be a detriment if you send Mercer down to Utica to start the season. And I'll tell you a reason why. The kid, there's something special about this kid, but he's on a roll. And right now he's, hearing Dougie Hamilton, he's commanded some respect in the locker room at such a young age right now that I just don't think he has anything to prove, in his development down in Utica, or up in Utica if you want to, be geographically correct. But I think he'd benefit more the first 10 games with the Devils than 10 games in Utica. I think he's just going to be lights out. And where's the challenge?
Yeah, I agree with that, because is we going to go to Utica and dominate? Like, yeah, he'll get to play with Holtz, which is pretty cool, and it might also be better for Holtz to go down there and play without Mercer and see what he can do with some of those guys. And that way, when he starts to really step up down there, you'll know that he's actually ready to drive a line on his own once he reaches the NHL, and it won't be just because of Mercer. So, and it's kind of weird because one guy got drafted not significantly higher, but a good 10 picks higher, and Mercer's just been impressive. And if you have that as your center depth on this team, assuming Nico and Jack play to the way we think they can this season, it could be a pretty deep team down the middle, which is always key.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about this the other day, that between Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, Dawson Mercer, and Michael McLeod, McLeod's the oldest center on this team, and he's 23. 23 years old. Is this, do you think this is going to be the center core? These are centers for the future?
Yeah, I think it's possible. They have someone like Zaka, who's probably just playing wing full time now. I don't ever anticipate seeing him play center again unless there's an injury or multiple injuries. But, you'd like to think that they're not going to be super high in the draft lottery this year because, there are some pretty good centers coming out over the next couple years. But if McLeod can really kind of be what is considered a new age fourth line center, I think of someone like Tyler Johnson was on the Lightning, just like a good solid fourth line center that can play some minutes if you need him to, or, the balance of the game, see how the game goes. If McLeod can do that and chip in some offense like he kind of showed he can, I mean, this was a first round pick that, a lot of people perceived as a highly skilled individual. And if he's your fourth line center kind of playing a double role, then yeah, I think it could be the core group of centers over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think that it's just weird to think about that you have these 4 centers and you just have your centers. It's for so long the Devils had a different center somewhere in the lineup every single year. And I feel like most teams have to deal with that. Even the Lightning have a new center this year because they had to get rid of Yanni Gord. Or they didn't get rid of him, but he got selected in the expansion draft. So it's just it's interesting to look at that even your fourth line center seems solidified for at least the foreseeable future. So let me ask you this. What are your expectations? We try to be a little bit realistic. You're the positive one at pucksandpitchforks.com. I feel like I'm the one. Me and Charlie tend to go into the negative section. What is the positive outlook from Vinnie Parise on the Devils this year?
Yeah, well, in my blog where I kind of previewed the Metropolitan as a whole, I had the Devils in 7th. And yeah, I'm Mr. Positivity,
Oof.
But until they prove that they're better than Philly, New York, and Pittsburgh, it's hard for me to just put them there. But while predicting them there, I definitely want to leave myself plenty of room to be wrong, because if Jack Hughes and Nico are like all-stars, and Mackenzie Blackwood has one of those good years, I was listening to your previous guest, and he makes some great points about goaltending, how it just flips from year to year, and a guy can go from being, getting memes of a sword going through his back to winning the Vezina trophy the following year. Like, those kinds of things can happen with goaltending, so we'll see what happens with Blackwood. Bernier was awesome on a stinky Detroit team last year. Dougie Hamilton obviously adds tremendous depth to the blue line. If Severson and Smith can get back healthy, that's a pretty good group with Subban, probably in a more fit role for him to succeed. And then there's plenty of good forwards where if Sharon Govich is so good that he scores 30 goals and Kuokkanen is so good where he has 55-plus points, then yeah, I obviously can see this team being a bubble team by the end of the season and maybe even a team that is, by the time it's all said and done, we're like, whoa, watch out for the Devils in years to come. So it kind of feels like it's going to go one of two ways for this season for me.
Especially if that penalty kill gets fixed.
Yes,
Especially
that's a big
because
key.
then they'll be extra dangerous down the stretch.
Well, let me ask you something based on that. Jack Hughes, we all think of him as, the smaller sized offensive guru that he is and was with the U.S. national development team back in 2019. But now he's here in New Jersey, and we're seeing that he is one of the best players on the team at taking the puck away from his opponent. And he's good when he's got the puck defensively and he can get rid of it and make plays. Why not have a guy like that kill penalties on a new wave style?
I'll even take a step further. What about Mercer and Hughes as the Jackrabbits on the PK as forwards? They will stretch the ice. They've got breakaway speed. Mercer has the same knack as Jack Hughes of stealing the puck. I mean, some of Mercer's goals came off unassisted, not because he was a puck hog. He actually created his own chances by stealing the puck.
So I'm going to
I really like that.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate. Is that if you corner Jack Hughes into taking 4 minutes per game on the penalty kill, that means that you now only have about 16 or 14 to 16 minutes to play him at 5v5 in power play. So I feel like that you're hamstringing yourself on offense by putting Jack Hughes there. I think you have other players there. Now, while Michael McLeod doesn't have the hockey IQ to make those same takeaways, he does have the speed to turn the takeaways he does get into chances on the other end. So there's that. Like McLeod, I think, is a good name. I even think like a Miles Wood would be an interesting guy because he has been somebody who he had a much better hockey IQ last year. He's also a guy he's left some to be desired. But I think if you look at last year where he was making the right moves and he wasn't making those major mistakes, he's another guy who could turn things into points. But obviously you got, Zaka is a little bit slower when it comes to those kinds of things, and he doesn't get the takeaways as much. He's a little behind on the reactionary stuff. But the Devils do have, and Mercer, I think, is a guy you could definitely put on there since he's a third line guy. He's not going to get as many 5v5 minutes with Nico and Jack Hughes ahead of him. So I think you can take those kinds of chances with Mercer on that line. I just think Hughes would be a mistake.
Yeah, you make a bunch of really good points. He like
Go ahead, Vinny.
It could be like a matchup type game though. So like if the Devils are doing a good job killing their penalties with the guys that Nick suggests should be more regular penalty killers, then yeah, you keep rolling with that. But let's say late in a game, if you're up by one and you need to preserve a lead and the other team's going on a power play and you feel that Jack Hughes gives you the best chance at killing that particular penalty, then I don't think that there's a reason not to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you could play matchups, absolutely. I think you would use it more when you're down one and if you go on the penalty kill.
Yeah, that too.
Rather than up one, because I think up one you're more in preservation mode, and sometimes it doesn't work. So maybe that's the wrong outlook to have on it. But I know that how NHL GM or NHL coaches are going to look at it. They're going to look at it more when they're more in desperation mode than in preservation mode.
Sure. I kind of just started getting this idea from like watching the Oilers over the last couple of years. Like they use McDavid and Draisaitl on the penalty kill every now and then. And these two guys, if they get in a 2-on-1 shorthanded, they bury it a fair amount of times. So, but yeah, I'm with you. You also don't want these guys getting hurt. There's obviously more risk of getting hurt on a penalty kill when you're out there with a potential to block a shot or, something like that. Put yourself out there in order to keep the other team from scoring. So there's definitely pros and cons to the whole thing, but I agree that regardless of what the solution is, the penalty kill needs to get much, much better.
I'm
Vinnie, you
looking
wrote
at
about
it
the
from
Olympics. Oh no, you go,
ahead.
Sam, because you're going to stick it.
No, I'm just saying the only reason why I disagree with you, Nick, because you make good points, but about the minutes and all that. I think right now I'm looking at the big picture with Jack Hughes. He's so young right now. Learning how to kill penalties at his young age will serve him well years from now when 4 minutes left in the Eastern Conference Finals and you got to kill off a penalty and you put your best guy out there to stretch the ice and go shorthanded, I think that's going to go a long way. And if you don't want Jack Hughes to be on the penalty kill, guess what? Stop taking penalties. That will solve
ties
that.
Into
yep.
That ties into what I'm going to ask Vinnie next then, because it all depends on what's your goal for this season. Is your goal development or is your goal to win? So, Vinnie, what do you think is Tom Fitzgerald's goal for the Devils? Do you think his goal is to develop Jack Hughes into a future superstar, develop Dawson Mercer, develop Nico Hischier even further, or do you think his goal is to be a playoff team? What do you think is the goal of upper management?
I kind of think it's a cop-out answer to say both, but I think that
answer.
Yeah, but if you worry about developing these guys and making sure that they have what's necessary to succeed going forward, I think that will lead to winning. Because the Metropolitan isn't as good as it once was. If they nurture Jack Hughes into being this season maybe 75, 80 points, just so they know that he can be eventually 90 to 100 points, I mean, we'll see how that ends up going. But I think that would obviously help the Devils win games. And so you add Dougie Hamilton, and you can't pay Dougie Hamilton $8 million or 8.2, whatever it ended up being in the end. I can't remember off the top of my head. If you do that, it can't be a year where you're just like, oh, we're just developing. We're not trying to win. Like Dougie Hamilton didn't come here to develop Jack Hughes or Dawson Mercer. He came here to help this team get better and try and win. So I think in the process of helping these guys develop will lead to them being a better team in the standing.
All right, so I'm gonna pivot a little bit for my last question. You wrote about the Olympics. We didn't talk much about it. I guess mostly because people are waiting to make sure that the NHL is going to go because we just don't trust them. But I feel like it's fair to ask, do you feel like there's going to be a good Devils representation at the Olympics this year? Hughes is on the bubble, Hamilton's on the bubble, Blackwood's on the bubble. There's a lot of bubble guys.
I think there will be a fair amount of New Jersey representation. So did Belarus make it?
They did not.
Are they? Okay, then so Yegor Sharangovich is probably out. But there's
Sharangovich.
I think Kuokkanen will play for Finland. I definitely think Bratt will play for Sweden. Jack Hughes, like you mentioned. If I were them, I would have Jack Hughes center the Tkachuk brothers and call it the Jack ASS line, just because it'd be funny and it would be a really good line. But Nico Hischier is already named to the Swiss team. Dougie Hamilton, if he puts up another year in the first half like he did last year, I certainly think he's going to make it. This guy came in fourth place for the Norris Trophy. I mean, you got to have a guy like that. I kind of think Blackwood's going to fall just short because I do think they're going to take Carey Price. And then I can see them going with Carter Hart just because of the name, and I don't know how smart that is or whatever. I think Marc-Andre Fleury, even at his age, is someone to consider if he has a good year with the Hawks. Binnington's GM is the GM of Team Canada. So I think that might force a tiebreaker between Binnington and Blackwood, who are my two number 3s on Team USA. And I think the tiebreaker is probably the GM of the Blues, Doug Armstrong, handling Team Canada. So, I think I named all the big players on the team. Obviously, PK Subban's days of playing for Team Canada.
Tatar's probably going to make it too.
Who?
Tatar's probably going to make it for, is it Slovakia, I think?
Oh, yeah, he will absolutely play it for Slovakia. That's a really good point. So a good portion of the top 6, like Miles Wood obviously isn't going to play for Team USA or anything like that. But, I mean, there's a chance. I mean, would Ty Smith be in consideration for Canada if he just goes off this year. I know Canada's defense isn't as strong as it once was, but it's still Canada, and they tend to go with the more older veteran players that are, if there's a tiebreaker, it's something along those lines. But yeah, I do think more than usual there will be a fair amount of Devils representation in the Olympics this year.
Well, that's all I got. 3 hours and 15 minutes of
What a run.
content. Vinnie, promote what you got coming up on pucksandpitchforks.com and the Windy City and Sox Showdown. Just tell us what you got coming up.
Yeah, just finished up the White Sox season. They unfortunately lost to those stinky Astros. So now we get to all watch them play in the ALCS and have a chance to win the World Series. It should surprise no one if they do. They're very good. So we'll be getting into off-season stuff for the White Sox. The Bears stink, and they keep fooling people into thinking they're good. So you can read up on all that on thewindycity.com, along with me covering the Blackhawks is kind of like my side team in terms of professional. But, you know, of course, Heart with the New Jersey Devils and what's coming up this season on Pucks and Pitchforks is just me and you and the crew doing what we can to make people love this team. And, of course, the Let's Go Devils pregame show, Friday night, 6:30. 6 to 6:30.
You got the time right. See, Vinny does everything right, Nick.
Yeah, I even said the hour
going like
ahead
me.
because I'm an hour behind.
Yeah. Should I close,
That's-
Nick? Or
Yeah,
Are you done?
I got nothing.
Oh,
I got
okay.
Friday morning. Friday morning, we're gonna have the big Pucks and Pitchforks prediction piece. That's coming Friday morning from the entire crew. These two are both gonna be on it, right, Sam?
Yeah.
Sam, you better be on it. I'm going to write mine tonight
I'm on the
at 2
email.
in the morning, so you can do it.
All right.
So we got big predictions from everybody at the site. Check it out. Friday morning, pucksandpitchforks.com.
pucksandpitchforks.com, and also Friday night, Todd's Lounge 973. The music starts at 5 p.m. Eastern, 6 to 6:30. Game Day Live's debut for the Devils take on the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll be there at Todd's Lounge 973. Lots of fun. See you there. Till next time, let's go Devils.